and welcome to the Stardom Cast Extra. Happy 2022. I'm your host, Rob Gunn, and I'm joined by Matt Turner. Matt, Happy New Year. Have you had a good one?
Absolutely, sir. Happy New Year. How's everybody over there, and how's everybody feeling?
Yeah, not too bad. Unfortunately, I'm still testing positive for COVID, but no symptoms anymore. To be honest, the worst bit I've had is just a little bit sleepy. I've been fine the last couple of days. I was a bit worse for wear after we recorded our last podcast. I think it was just because I hadn't been used to talking for that long since I'd had it. But yeah, I'm fine. My brother's got it. He's suffered a lot more. My girlfriend's fine as well. I come out of isolation on the 7th of January. So yeah, it's been a fairly uneventful start to the year. What about your celebrations? How did they get underway?
It went fairly well. Nothing really too crazy. I think we talked about it on our last show. Literally everything happened kind of the way it did. It went bowling with my wife, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and my two nephews, 8 and 11. And we bowled 4 games, and I think I came in dead last in every one except for one. So the 8-year-old and 11-year-old whipped me pretty good. But
is this one of those where you say, I did it on purpose, I didn't want them to come last, or are you just that bad at bowling?
You know, and I probably bowled like 200 times. It's just like something I just can't pick up. No, and they're like supreme athletes. They're like all-stars for Little League, and it was like they're bowling like 3 or 4 strikes in a row and having the time of their life. But I'm like such a good loser just because when I used to play sports in high school and before that, I was consistent. Like our Little League team for like 3 years in a row went like 1-15 for like 3 years. So it's like
wow.
I'm just so used to losing that it was just like if you didn't know, like if you weren't looking at the scores and you were just looking at the 6 of us, you're like, oh, that guy over there, he's probably winning because he's having the best time. It's just like, I'm always happy. It doesn't take much to make me happy. So, but no, and my New Year's was good. It's always good, you know, spending time with the family. Then it was just a quiet night home with just me and the wife. And that was, you know, the next day you had to wake up and do extra cardio to get all the vodka out of your system. But that's just to be expected is all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what is New Year's if you haven't got to cardio the vodka out of you? Which just the thought of that makes me feel a little bit sick. I'm not going to lie. I've never been the best vodka drinker, just partly because it just tastes like the skin on the inside of my mouth ripping off. But there we are. It's funny you should mention All-Stars, though, because, and check this out for a transition, we're talking about one of the All-Stars in Stardom. We're talking about Io Shirai and her.
Wow, what a transition! That's what you paid for on the Patreon here, folks. Transitions like that. We didn't even set that up either. That was wow.
Oh, honestly, I don't think anything makes me happier on a podcast than an organic transition, and that it felt so right. It felt so right. Yeah, man, we're talking about Io Shirai. Obviously, thank you for paying and becoming part of our Patreon. We truly do appreciate it, and we thought, what better way to start off this Patreon than talking about one of the greatest reigns with the World of Stardom Championship that there ever was, and that is Io Shirai's second run with the belt from the 23rd of December 2015 to the 21st of June 2017, a whopping 546 days. To this day inclusive, still the second longest run, single longest run with the belt, just behind Nene Takahashi with 602 days. We've had the pleasure, Matt, of watching 16 Io Shirai matches. And, you know, aside from the obvious, you know, the fantastic trilogy with Mayu Iwatani and the fantastic match with Meiko Satomura and with Kairi Hojo, what were some of the hidden classics? Before we get into the history and the nitty-gritty and start analysing some of these matches, what were some of the hidden classics? Maybe some of these matches from these 16 that people are like, maybe I should check that out. Haven't heard a lot about that.
The Yoki Bito match from, I believe it was October 30th, 2016. I only seen a little bit of her, and I think you were telling me like that to you, that was a hidden gem. And boy, howdy, you weren't kidding. That was a hidden gem. The 2 Viper matches, especially the second one, I cannot wait to talk about that one, especially the fact that the title defense before was the second Mayu Iwatani match, which a lot of people think is the greatest match in the history of Stardom. I'm a big fan of Shayna Baszler. I thought that match was really good. The match with a young Sugetsu. I mean, every single one of these matches was that Tony Storm? Every single one of these matches was just excellent. Like, even the ones where just like, he's kind of dismissive, but like you can see where Io pulls her opponent up in every single match. And no offense to anybody that she's wrestled here, but you can tell that Io Shirai here is the top, not only women's wrestler in the world, but this was at a point where a lot of people were talking Io Shirai might be the best overall, best wrestler in the world. Like, in the same conversation, we're talking 2015 to 2016 here, or 2017. We're talking in the same breath as Okada, Omega, AJ Styles. And, if you were to go back and revisit some of those conversations, I'd be hard-pressed to disagree that Io Shirai is not number one on that list. Because these are just absolutely fantastic. Every single one of these. Just what she does is she gets herself over, she gets the belt over, she gets her opponent over, and she gets the company over. She gets all four of those things over in every single one of these 16 matches. And I think I texted you when this was all said and done. I said, this might be my third favorite Japanese title reign in the last maybe 25 years. Number one to me is Okada from about 4 or 5 years ago when he broke Tanahashi's record. I just think just what he did with the company and the two Kenny Omega matches and the Shibata match and the Suzuki match, I thought that's number one. Number two was Kobashi's initial GHC title reign from Pro Wrestling Noah. But this to me is like number three. And you can take pretty much any, because I'm a big fan of long title reigns, but you can take any long title reign in the last 30 or 40 years, and which one starts with a better match than the Meiko match, and which one ends with a better match than the Mayu Iwatani match, than Io Shirai's. I mean, I think she has a bookend as far as long title reigns go. You take anybody that's had over, even outside of Japan. You take any of the long Ring of Honor runs. The Danielson run, the Samoa Joe run, the Nigel McGuinness run, the CM Punk WWE run. I don't think there's anyone that has a better start and end to a long title run than this Io Shirai run.
I mean, you'd be forgiven, considering with the 2 title changes included in 16 matches, you'd be forgiven for assuming that at least, that yes, she has maybe 6 absolute classics, but the rest of, middling matches. However, you've hit the nail on the head here. She's so frighteningly consistent across these matches. I mean, for me personally, out of the 16 matches, there was perhaps 2 that I was a bit like, I could take or leave these matches. But you mentioned the Shayna Baszler one. That was fantastic. I didn't expect a lot from that one, simply because of the way Shayna Baszler's come across in WWE, especially on the main roster. But her match here, she felt like an absolute killer. And Io's selling, I mean, it's going to be obviously a bit of a thread throughout the entire podcast, but her selling is absolutely phenomenal, especially for the big powerhouses, people like Alpha Female, people like Viper, people like Shayna. She sold like an absolute beast. I mean, even when she is a heel in the latter part of the run, people are still cheering for her because it's impossible not to get behind her. And then, of course, you've got the fantastic storytelling in the Meiko match, the Kairi match, and especially that Mayu trilogy, which, to my mind, is still one of the best trilogies and certainly the best feud that Stardom has ever had. So let's delve straight in, man. Let's go straight into this. But before we get to Io Shirai, this run doesn't start with Io, it doesn't start with Meiko, and it does not start with Kairi Hojo. In fact, we go back, all the way back to Yoshiko and the 22nd of February at Korakuen Hall from Stardom Queen Shout. Now, at this point in the main event, and this will be a show and perhaps a match that we go into more detail about on later Patreon episodes, but most people are aware that at that show, Yoshiko went into business for herself against Act Yasukawa, and the match ended in a no contest once Yoshiko basically beat the living hell out of Act Yasukawa, broke her orbital bone, and it was a very, very unsettling match to watch, and in fact, it's got the nickname The Ghastly Match. Following that, Yoshiko was at first suspended, then had the belt stripped from her, and then, of course, she was fired. So the belt was held up, and the tournament final would see Kairi Hojo defeat Io Shirai at Korakuen Hall at Stardom, the highest 2015, which was a little bit of a shock. I think people expected Io to be the rightful sort of heir to Yoshiko's reign, but no, Kairi Hojo won, went on to defend it against Mayu, Meiko Satomura in a time limit draw, and then Takumi Iroha before then losing it at Stardom X Stardom 2015 to Meiko Satomura. Now, at this point, Meiko Satomura is effectively an invader during the Stardom versus Sendai girls feud, and obviously had beaten Kairi Hojo. Kairi Hojo, Mayu Iwatani, and Io Shirai are all part of Threedom at this point and are very much the pinnacle of Stardom. Meiko at the top of Sendai Girls. She went through Io Shirai and then went on to completely obliterate Io's other Threedom stablemate, Mayu Iwatani, in her only successful defense of the belt. The match ended 11 minutes into the match, and it was stopped via a referee stoppage. Now, after that, Meiko Satomura called out Io Shirai and basically said, for the honour of Stardom, for the honour of your friends that I've basically just run through, you need to face me. And after a great deal of thought, Io stepped up to the challenge, which brings us to the year-end climax 2015, Meiko Satomura versus Io Shirai, and of course we all know that the match ends Io Shirai defeating Meiko Satomura in 24 minutes and 50 seconds. I'll be honest, Matt, this wasn't a match I'd seen, it was a match I'd heard about, but this might be one of my favourite Stardom matches. Alongside that trio of matches with Mayu, this is a real standout from this reign. This was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, when I got done watching this, literally in my notes, and I've already seen the Mayu trilogy going into this, and I was glad to revisit it. But I got done watching it, and I was like, that might be the greatest female match I've ever seen. And I think I might have said that 3 or 4 times during these matches. It was exactly what you want in a match if you're in the crowd, because they take you on a roller coaster ride. You have 2 distinct styles. Obviously, Io has the speed, the quickness, the high flying ability. Even though she can mix it up with submissions and the strikes, but Meiko is an absolute just brutal striker. And they use that easy psychology for the storytelling. I mean, it starts off Io's using her speed to take the advantage, and Meiko basically just keeps leg kicking her to take away her advantage. There's an STF somewhere in the towards the middle of this match that she puts on Io Shirai, and Io is selling. And not only her selling, but the offensive selling of Meiko Satomura as well. It looks like she's going to get ready to rip her face off. From there on, Io makes her comeback, and that's where you get the really, really good roller coaster ride from the psychology, because now you're getting the crowd more invested into it. I mean, they were invested from the jump on this, but once Io starts making her comeback to build towards the finish, the crowd gets so hot for Io's comeback, and you can tell they so want this title change. They respect Meiko, but at the same time, as you alluded to before, Rob, she's an outsider, and they want to see Io crowned. And this might have been their story all along, because, a lot of people thought that Io was going to be Kairi for the belt when they vacated it, but I thought that maybe this is what they want to do, is hold off just a little bit to build it. This is the exact moment. If that's what they were doing, they definitely caught lightning in a bottle here, because this was fantastic. And the one thing I'm going to say this probably 7 or 8 times during this podcast, one of the awesomest, the coolest things about Io's finishers is she hits a bunch of things in a row. And I'm always a big fan of that, where it's like somebody has to use 2 or 3 or 4 big moves in order to put somebody away. And in this case, Io hits the insane elbow, Kairi's finisher, her friend's finisher, the person that Meiko won the belt from, and then the moonsault for the finish. This was an easy, if you want to put this on the Meltzer scale, this was an easy 5-star, absolute instant classic that people should go out of their way to see.
Having Io finish the match by using all the finishes of people that Meiko had steamrolled is just, it's a touch of brilliance. I mean, she first hits the dragon suplex from Mayu, and then the insane elbow from Kairi. It's such a great little sort of capping off of the chapter of this. It's tremendous, a really subtle thing. I loved Meiko in this match. I got, to make a Western comparison, I got such Brock Lesnar vibes from her. Like, she was punting Io around the ring like Dan Marino and just connecting with absolutely everything. At one point, she basically stood absorbing all of Io's offense until she tired herself out and then went in for the kill. And she reminded me that much of Brock Lesnar that she even does the little Brock Lesnar dance, which just tops it off for me. But yeah, this was so hard-hitting, and it's a situation for Io that she doesn't find herself in for a long time, actually, in this reign, where she is not only the underdog, but significantly outpowered. Like, you know, you've got Alpha Female, you've got Viper coming up, who are a lot stronger, but you get the impression that Io can be quicker and maybe chop them down and grind them down. But here, Meiko felt like a proper final boss, where she had the power, but she's also so deceptively quick. I mean, there was one point where Meiko transitions from a lucha arm drag into an STF, and it is the most beautiful transition I think I've ever seen in wrestling. It was beautiful. But then she'll hit this litany of enormous suplexes, you know, literally folding Io in half, hitting 2 consecutive Death Valley bombs, you know, the thing that knocked out Kairi and the thing that led to the finish at Mayu, and you've got just that last second Io punching out the pinfall, and Korakuen Hall erupts. And that's a huge thing in a lot of these matches. The crowd are so invested in Io, and you're right, with obviously Meiko being a little bit of an outsider with the Sendai Girls feud, they do want that title change, and the crowd we've got a saying here in England, I don't know if it's the same in America, where the crowd can often be what we call the 12th man when it comes to football. And, you know, how the crowd react often sort of inspires a team, and I think that inspires Io here, and it's a great little add to the match, but this match never lets up. What an advert for Stardom. What an advert. And to be honest, as we move on from this match, it doesn't let up, because her first defense of the belt, V1, is against her old friend, Kairi Hojo, from the Stardom 5th anniversary show, which, again, from Korakuen Hall, Io Shirai, the champion, defeats Kairi Hojo in 29 minutes and 31 seconds, just 29 seconds short of the time limit. And this is a rather simple story in the tournament final. Like I mentioned, back in 2015, Kairi defeated Io to win the vacant belt. Then she lost the belt to Meiko and watched her friend sort of rescue Stardom from the evil that was Sendai Girls. And Kairi basically asked for a rematch and a chance to redeem herself. Matt, another fantastic match.
Yeah, really, I'm going to get my only negative out of the way for pretty much every Io vs. Kairi match. It's an absolute shame that we did not get to see this on WWE TV. It's an absolute shame. Can you imagine if like this was on Raw or SmackDown and they said, yeah, you know, we know the two of them have history. Let them go out there and give them 16 minutes. And then they come back like 2 weeks. And then obviously it'd be a classic. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, that was good. Let's give them 20 minutes. And then let's build to a pay-per-view where they give them like 30 minutes. Like, I think with all the TV that they have and the production quality, can you imagine this match, you know, being seen in front of 12,000 people with another like maybe million and a half watching on TV? Oh, that would just be that would be amazing. But anywho, yeah, this is, I mean, what do you expect from these two? These two are absolutely fantastic. They're brilliant. And we talked about Io with her selling and her facials. Kairi's the same way, especially when she's doing her comebacks with those strikes. I mean, she looks like she weighs like 110 pounds, but it looks like she could knock out a UFC heavyweight with the spinning back fist and those forearms that she just throws and the sliding D. I mean, it's not only just her defensive selling with her facials, but the way her offense is selling as well. That she just keeps fighting through the pain, and she's trying to hit Io with everything she has, because she had the belt for just a brief moment, and she wants to win it again. She has that crazy, insane spear as well. It just seems like it comes out of nowhere, and the timing and ring positioning and where they put in the match is just brilliant. The locomotion German by Io Shirai, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Io winds up doing the insane elbow. I thought as if, hey, I kind of use this to win the belt. Let me see, I can kind of use this on Kairi. And then actually Io even kicks out of the insane elbow, which up until that point, Rob, I mean, you know a little better than me. Did anybody ever kick out of the insane elbow before Io did?
Ooh, you're asking there. Unfortunately, I don't know. I imagine someone on the Patreon will know, but if they did, it wasn't very often.
Yeah, they do, and that's a great thing Stardom still does to this day. In 2022, is they do a good job protecting finishes. And again, finish 2 big moves in a row, Tiger suplex, top rope moonsault. Again, I'm going to give my Meltzer rating to every one of these matches. This to me was 4.5 stars. Absolutely brilliant.
We're along the same lines there, because with the Satomura match, I also gave it 5. And then with the Kairi match, I actually gave it 4 3/4. I love the dynamic between the two. I thought, if anything, Io was quicker in this match than she was against Meiko, which I didn't think was possible. And I think it's because she's against someone so stylistically similar in Kairi. You're absolutely right about Kairi's spear. I mean, for someone who weighs, probably 110 wet through, her spear hits hard. And I mean, it looks even worse when she spears the post, because genuinely, great camera work. They get it from the back on the outside, so it proper looks like she hits it hard. It's an interesting dynamic that, even though it's wrestled hard, and there are some strikes here that connect, like really, really hard, especially from Kairi towards the end. But there's still clean breaks, especially initially, and it's wrestle hard, but it's wrestled fairly, which, of course, is interesting following the Satomura match. But then that changes slightly. Kairi takes a little bit too long sort of getting back into the ring after Io hits her with an Asai moonsault. And Io gets a little bit annoyed with how long Kairi's taking to get back in the ring. So Io drags her in and starts basically assaulting her back. And then Kairi hits a moonsault, but loses her balance, which really enrages Io. She's like, don't use my move. What the hell is this? So in response to that, as you mentioned, Io then goes for the insane elbow, which Kairi then kicks out of. And that's where we sort of get the volley of attacks. Like, Kairi lays in an absolute litany of spinning backhands, like just one after another. And that's that sort of rage that's bottled up. We started as friends. We started having this sort of hard yet noble match. And now it's sort of got a little bit personal. Of course, it's the debut, in this run at least, of Io hitting the moonsault off the concourse way, which we will see on a multitude of occasions. Not that I'm complaining. But Io ultimately is just too strong. She kicks out of Kairi's insane elbow. She goes for a second one, but Io gets her knees up. Tombstone pile driver, package German suplex, tiger suplex moonsault, and Io wins, retaining in her first defense. After the match, a load of Gaijins and members of Iwatani flood the ring and square up to the baby faces. Io then rather unwisely sasses them by saying she's the champion, and is subsequently leveled by Viper with a clothesline. And that takes us to match 3, but just as a footnote of match 2, the fire and desire of both women, and especially Kairi, made this a really endearing match. And this will actually sort of permeate into their second match, which we'll be talking about obviously later in 2017. But this was another one that I really, really enjoyed. We could go through this match and literally go through move by move by move by move, and we still wouldn't have done it justice. It's these 2 matches, these opening 2 matches, you do need to go and watch. I think the Kairi Hojo one is on Stardom World, but I don't know about the Meiko one, or the other way around. One of them isn't on Stardom World anyway. But Matt, is there anything you want to sort of tie off this match with before we move on to match 3 and Io's second defense?
No, my friend, I think we absolutely nailed it. Just absolutely classic match, and just a great way to start off the first version of her reign, or the first defense of her reign.
We move on then to the 5th night of the Stardom 5th Anniversary Tour entitled Stardom vs. the World 2, again from Korakuen Hall, where Io Shirai defeated Viper in 16 minutes and 20 seconds. Now, this is completely different stylistically to the two previous matches, because Viper, as good as she is, and she is really good, she's nowhere near as quick as Kairi, nowhere near as quick as Meiko. So it's going to be a different match, but even so, and despite Viper being significantly more powerful than Io, and, you know, especially early on, gets the advantage early because of that, I still think they do and tell a really good story in this match, Matt.
Yeah, they do. I mean, again, it's another simple psychology. You know, it's Viper's the bigger heel, and Io's the smaller champion babyface, and it's there's a lot of brawling, you know, on the outside to kind of get started. Once Io gets rolling, every time, in the psychology, this is really good in the beginning and to the middle. Anytime Io gets rolling with a whole bunch of things, Viper just hits like one strike to, like a clothesline to put her down, or a body block to put her down, and she just keeps kind of, you know, staying on Io. Io might get one or two things in, boom, she's back down. And this is where Io really has to embrace her ugly side, because then you just see Io just firing up with these vicious, tight strikes. And they actually wind up busting Viper's nose open. And then there's a point, too, where she's on the outside, and Io does this beautiful triangle moonsault where she just basically almost flawlessly runs to the from the inside to the outside post and does that, you know, picture-perfect moonsault. And again, Io always does a whole bunch of things to finish her opponent off, and she hit a big German suplex onto Viper, and not one but two moonsaults to get the win. Again, simple story to tell. Everything was well done. She made Viper a legit contender for that belt, to a point where, boy, maybe that somewhere down the line, if Viper gets a rematch, and obviously, you know, if you're listening to this podcast, you'll know towards the end here she does, where it's like Io brought her up to the point where maybe when that rematch does happen, she can win the belt. So Io did a great job making Viper look really, really good here, and Viper obviously did the same way for Io. I give this one 4.25 stars.
Yeah, we're along the same lines there as well. I gave it 4. I thought Viper did a tremendous job, and Io, obviously, you know, again, we're going to be talking a lot about her selling, was just absolutely tremendous. I thought she managed to counter someone who is significantly bigger, you know, a completely different body shape, a completely different size. She combated that extremely well. Now, obviously, Matt, you are a wrestler. How do you have to change your game when you're battling someone with such a significant power advantage over you? What do you have to change? How does that change your game?
You use your speed. I mean, you use your speed. You don't want to go toe to toe with somebody that you know that you can't outpower. And obviously, there's certain points in the match where if you can kind of find an opening to use maybe your striking power, as Io did here, and obviously work, as you wind up busting, you know, Viper open. That's basically, you know, where you want to find your opening. But you don't want to, you know, if you're going against a catch wrestler, you don't want to try to submission wrestle them. If you're going up against a high flyer, you're not going to try to outfly them. Now, granted, there might be points in that match where you might be able to get a hold in, or like, you know, a high cross body in or something like that. And that's basically kind of what Io did here. She used her speed, she used her quickness, and then when it was time to kind of use her power, which she did with the German suplex, she did that to put Viper down long enough where then she can go back to her bread and butter, which is her moonsault. And then she wound up using the two moonsaults, which I thought that was a great little thing. Like, she could have hit her with one. I think everybody would have been okay, but the fact, she had to hit two, you know, to beat her, which just basically just shows like how tough an opponent Viper is.
It's something she mentions actually in their second match, where she says Viper is that powerful that I have to use two of my best moves to keep her down. So she does put Viper over for how strong she is. I'm not sure when Viper got bust open in this match. I've watched it twice and I still can't work out where her face busts open, but there we are. The fact that Io, despite the significant disparity between the two body shapes, despite the fact of everything, Io is still able to hit a deadlift German suplex on Viper. And that's a phenomenal thing to be able to do. That's incredible power. And she shows that in a couple of other matches that we're going to be looking at. But especially here, the first time I saw it, I was like, that is ridiculously impressive. Like, ridiculously so.
When you're doing that deadlift German, your opponent's giving you next to no give. They're giving you next to no boost. So that's pretty much like 95% all you. And considering the fact that Io Shirai does not look like her next opponent in this match, a big weightlifter, that just goes to show you, it's like, Io, she's so good with the high flying stuff, the springboard drop kick, the 619, obviously the moonsaults. But boy, she throws some wicked suplexes.
She does. I mean, especially when you consider the amount of stress that must have been on her back during this match, because all of Viper's offense is impact moves. The snake bite is an impact move. The splash, the Vader bomb, or the Viper bomb as she calls it, they're all impact moves. So she's taken a lot in this 16 minutes. So to be able to then deadlift into a two count is really, really impressive. And honestly, I've seen a lot of Viper on the British indie scene, and obviously, in Stardom as well, and she's always impressed me. And I think it's criminal what they're doing to her in WWE, but that is a conversation for another time. 2 moonsaults, and Io retains. Another really impressive match. We then move on to her third defense, which is the 4th match in this chronology, defeating the old champion, Alpha Female, in 13 minutes and 18 seconds on the 26th of March 2016 at Stardom Grows Up Stars in Nagata, apparently the first time that Stardom ran that prefecture. Now, a little bit of background on Alpha Female. She is the former second World of Stardom champion. She returned after almost 2 years of absence at Stardom's The Highest 2016 show to defeat Viper in a battle to see who was Europe's strongest, a match she won under dubious circumstances, let's say. After Thunder Rock, which is Mayu and Io, successfully defended their Goddesses of Stardom championships against Meiko, Satomura, and Kairi Hojo, Alpha Female arrived in the ring to challenge Io for the World of Stardom Championship on March the 26th in Nagata, a rematch from 3 years ago when Io ended Female's run with the red belt without a successful title defense. Still, to this day, the only person to have the Wonder of Stardom title and to lose it without a successful title defense, which adds a certain level of revenge that Alpha Female will want to take out on Io. To me, this match is in a very similar vein to the Viper defense because of the disparity in power. But what did you think about it, Matt?
So it wasn't bad by any sense, but this was probably the weakest of the matches. Just because Alpha Female, and I know she's wrestled over here in the States as Jazzy Gabber. I believe I have that right. And I think she was in one of the Mae Young Classics, and then afterwards, I think she got signed by WWE, and whatever they were doing to her, she was getting over. She was getting over with the crowd really well, and then I just don't know what happened. If she got injured or whatever, they just pulled the plug off her. But you can kind of tell, like, outside of her power and her look, there really wasn't much there. But she's different. She has a completely different look than not only than any other female on the Stardom roster, but just about anybody, in a female roster anywhere. She looks intimidating. She looks like she can kick your ass and probably can. But again, I thought they did a good job by only keeping this about 13 minutes.
It was 13 minutes and, just let me get my notes back up, 13 minutes and 18 seconds.
Yeah, so they did a good job not overexposing her. I think anything like maybe over 15, it would have exposed Alpha Female. But Io does a good job selling, making sure she looks good, making sure that everything in this match makes sense. The one thing I definitely want to point out is Io, before she even hits the ring, is so over with this crowd. Just from her entrance alone, I mean, she is so over. You can tell this is a superstar. We're on our way to a fun title reign. Again, there wasn't really too much to this match. I did like Alpha Female's torture rack through the crowd. I thought that was pretty cool. I like how Io, towards the end, she's building her strikes. She hits a whole bunch of buzzsaw kicks. She hits a German suplex for the win. And I thought it was cool how they presented her with a bag of rice after the match. But this one, to me, I just gave this one 3.25 stars. Again, it wasn't bad, but compared to everything else on this run, it was just forgettable.
Yeah, I agree. Basically, what I've written in my notes is this is the Viper match, but Viper is more mobile and a little bit more inventive when it comes to moves and things like that. You're absolutely right. Alpha Female does rely a lot on her her look, sort of a lot of lariats being thrown, a lot of shoulder tackles, things like that. The only real variation that we see is Jazzy Gabert trying her Omegaplex. But aside from that, and aside from the introduction of a chair, which didn't make a lot of sense when you think it probably ended in a DQ, but there we are. I put that down to Alpha Female wanting a little bit of revenge on the embarrassment that Io caused her. Apart from that, there's not a great deal to talk about. And there's only really 2 matches in this run where there's not a lot to talk about. And it's unfortunate that this is one of them. Obviously, Alpha Female, a previous World of Stardom champion, but I'm on board with you. I think 3 1/4, and it's a serviceable title match. And it's mainly for Io's ragdoll-like selling of Alpha Female's offense, making her look like a juggernaut more than the way Alpha Female came across. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Let me ask you this, Rob, real quick before we go into the next match, which is an absolute banger. I'm sure somewhere down the line on one of the Patreon episodes, we'll cover her Io's V10 title run, where she beats Alpha Female for the belt. But this match and that match, she doesn't beat her with the moonsault, which is weird because you have such a bigger competitor. You figured she would hit the stiff kicks and then go to the top rope for the moonsault. Do you have any idea? Did that pop into your head at all? Like, that's Io's best move. If you're going to get beat by the champion, you want to get beat by her best move. And here, Io doesn't hit it here or in the match, years prior.
Honestly, when I first saw it, and unless I'm very much mistaken, she beats Viper the second time with a German suplex as well. So I don't know whether it's almost like an ego thing where she wants to show, these people are significantly bigger than me, but I am still powerful. I am still the champion. I'm still number one. As though it's sort of that thing of proving herself thing. Or whether it was just for the crowd, that sort of wow factor of, do you know what? Alpha Female's bigger than me, but I can still German suplex her. Maybe. Or, it could be something simple, like Alpha Female didn't want to take the moonsault.
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking. Maybe she just didn't want to take it. But get what you said about Viper just a few seconds ago. I can't wait till we can cover that, because I think the whole match was just built around that. I know we're jumping ahead, but that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, how come in these 2 matches, and they're both for the biggest belt in the company, and she's wrestling the biggest star, in my opinion, in the history of the company. So how come she didn't want, I don't know, maybe if Io had hurt her back or her knees, or my thing was maybe she just didn't want to take it. She didn't feel safe. So that would be my kind of just theory on it. I just thought that was kind of odd.
Well, let's move on then. So we move on to match 5 in our little run. And it's her 4th defense against Mayu Iwatani at Stardom Gold May 2016 at Korakuen Hall once again, with Io winning in 21 minutes and 54 seconds. Now, this trilogy with Mayu is one of the best things that Stardom have ever done. And if you go back into the podcast archives, myself and Chris actually went through this trio of matches in a little bit more detail and actually sort of waxed lyrical about how fantastic the story is. And I have to shout out Armani Shoe Exchange, who has given me a lot of information regarding this reign in general, and especially the Mayu feud, so thank you to them. And go and follow them on Twitter, because they are an excellent Twitter follow. But in terms of this friendship, Mayu and Io were inseparable after Shirai took Iwatani under her wing, after her, let's call them inauspicious beginnings. And the pair created Thunder Rock, perhaps the most successful team in Stardom, and maybe even perhaps Joshi. It's important to note, and you'll see why, that a lot of Mayu's personality is incredibly impulsive, as proved by how she got into wrestling in the first place. She went to a Dragon Gate show and was like, right, I need to go and become a wrestler now. And she left Tokyo. I don't think she told her parents she was going. She left them a note and just was there straight away. It was an impulsive thing, but also in her moveset, where she could be a little bit too ambitious, sort of writing checks her body couldn't cash. Despite this, and despite everything, despite how much Io cared for her, it was still seen that Mayu was naught but Io's affable goof of a sidekick. However, Mayu progressed magnificently and ended up winning the 2016 Cinderella tournament, with her wish being to challenge her friend for the red belt. Io agreed, but very much saw this as an easy ride heading into the show. And thus begins one of the greatest rivalries. Matt, what do you think?
This was fantastic. Holy jeez, this was great. They get going. Obviously, there's respect between the two of them. They start out with some nice chain wrestling. Eventually, Io winds up gets going. Io hits a suicide dive, and I gotta say, from watching 16 of these matches and a whole bunch of her matches, Io probably has the sweetest suicide dive between the second and third rope. She just looks like a swan going through the second and third rope. It's absolutely beautiful. So she hits this suicide dive and just wipes out Mayu. And she goes to the top rope to hit the top rope moonsault on the outside. But Mayu, she knows Io. So what she does, she gets up all of her strength she's got left to stop her. They want to do a German on the floor. Io winds up getting the advantage on her. Starts hitting her with some stiff kicks and just taunting her. Mayu eventually gets fired up. She gets frustrated. Big, stiff form exchange. I mean, they're just going back and forth, clobbering each other. Io gets back on the advantage, and she puts her in this crazy high-angle cloverleaf, just working on Mayu's back. Eventually, they work their way out to the apron. Mayu Iwatani hits her beautiful dragon suplex onto the apron, teases a count-out. We're almost going to get a count-out victory. As soon as Io comes back in the ring, Mayu stays on her. Got to stay on that neck, stay on that back. She hits a big German suplex, and then she goes for the top rope reverse Rana or poison Rana. And they kind of messed that up. And I was like, that was the only little hiccup in this match because it was getting going. Mayu was not only getting the crowd into it, well, she was getting the crowd into it by her comeback. She hits the apron dragon. She hits the big German as soon as Io gets back in the ring. And then she goes for a springboard reverse Rana, and they mess up the spot. And they had the crowd right there. It didn't take them long to get back in the ring, get it back because Mayu winds up hitting the frog splash for a near 2 count. And then she goes for the stage 2 dragon suplex, her finisher. And then Io counters it into a stage 2 tiger suplex. She hits the arm capture German suplex and the moonsault for the win. I had this at 4 3/4 stars, and in my opinion, this was the worst of the 3 matches. At 4 3/4 stars.
Do you know what? I completely agree. As the start to a trilogy, it is perfect, and the story they're trying to tell is fantastic. I mean, it's amazing having embarked on this sort of retrospective, just how much Io's offense has inspired how Mayu wrestles. And, especially even more today, she's taken so much from her and put it into her own arsenal. But, everything from the pre-match comments show the disparity between the confident Io, who is giving off the, it'll be a good match, but I'm definitely going to beat her vibes, whereas Mayu is just a ball of nerves and anxiety, and that plays into that start where Mayu accelerates into Io, almost trying to channel that nervous energy, but he's also the first to give up attempting to out-wrestle Shirai before they start laying into each other with ridiculous strikes. We talked about how they know each other. They've been inseparable for years, and that's why we get so many reversals to start with. But that impulsive nature that Mayu has, there's a couple of points here where, for example, they had previously had one singles match, which was in the previous year's 5-star Grand Prix, went to a 15-minute time limit draw. So just before the match starts, Mayu says she doesn't want a time limit because the pair of them know each other so well. The match is only 21 minutes, but goes to show Mayu's impulsive nature. She doesn't go into this match with a plan, and you can tell. She just sort of thinks, do you know what? I'm a good wrestler. I'm just going to go in. I'm going to throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. And ultimately, that is why Io can take her apart. Because despite how good a wrestler Mayu is, when she runs out of ideas, she panics. And that's so important going forward, because that will be something that plays into especially the third match. And there's one point in particular. She locks in that Texas Cloverleaf, and Mayu is scrabbling. Mayu is panicking. You think, oh, God, she's going to tap out. Come on, get to the rope. And we are going to get to a point where that happens in the next couple of matches and things change. And I can't wait to talk about that. But ultimately, after this match, it almost gets embarrassing at points. Like, Io targets that leg. She launches Mayu into the corner, and Mayu collapses, can't even make it to the corner. And Io's literally crouching over her as though to go, really? This is your challenge? Okay. Mayu can't get her two-step dragon suplex off, but does hit that crazy dragon suplex on the apron, which will, of course, be a running theme throughout this trilogy of matches. But ultimately, Tombstone Piledriver, one moonsault. One moonsault is all it takes for Io to punish Mayu and come away with the victory. I mean, Io said at the start, it's going to be, we know each other so well, it's going to be the first person to make a mistake. And Mayu was the person who made that mistake. Post-match, Mayu gets comforted by Io, almost condescendingly. I don't know if you got that vibe as well, but the vibe I got was very much of, right, you had a go, okay, well done, but now go back to, where you belong, the tag division, the high-speed division, let the grown-ups play with the red and the white belt. And after that, Iwatani Kagetsu and Kyoko Kimura storm the ring, challenge for the tag belts, which does play into their second match, Mayu and Io's, later on, because Iwatani would take the Goddess of Stardom belts from Thunder Rock at the next Korakuen show. But yeah, I thought this tremendous. I thought it was a great start, and I completely agree with you. The best is yet to come from these two, but I loved the Io domination, almost placating Mayu until Mayu got a little bit of a footing in the match, and Io's like, okay, this is getting out of hand, and sort of lets it rip. Mayu felt very much like a child, like that sidekick in this match, in a way that she doesn't in those next two matches, Matt.
Yeah, this was just excellent. This was just absolutely excellent. And again, I've seen all three of these matches a few months ago. It was great to kind of just watch it as the story progressed, not only with the trilogy, but with these 16 matches.
Absolutely.
Absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely. So from there, we actually move on to Stardom's tour of Europe, where they sent Freedom to sort of solidify relationships with a series of European wrestling companies. One of those, and I'm going to try and get this right, the promotion that they're working with is the Association Bertois de Catch, which is, I believe, a French company. I believe. And the name of the event that we're going to be talking about is, okay, ABC Foim, as in for, EME, Gala International de Catch Féminin, Stardom Europe, Night 1. Sure.
That's exactly what I've written down here, note for note. No, I'm just kidding. Sure, you got it. Absolutely.
I mean,
nailed it.
Sure, why not? But yeah, this obviously is leading to it. This was more of an exhibition defense than anything else, with Io Shirai defeating Casey Owens in 11 minutes and 43 seconds to achieve V5, her fifth successful title defense. Now, I don't know a great deal about Casey Owens, Matt, but at the time of recording, she's the current EVE Pro Wrestling International Champion. She had runs in Ice Ribbon, TNT, as well as ICW Progress and Rev Pro here in the UK. And I believe she's been in NXT UK. I think she's wrestled 3 matches in NXT UK, all in losing efforts, against Ginny, Nina Samuels, and Kaylee Ray, who's actually ringside for this match and is the next challenger after this match. But we talked about the alpha female match and not having a great deal to say. Again, I stress this was pretty much an exhibition match, and yeah, didn't really get into third gear, did it?
No, I mean, the first thing is whoever promoted this show, shame on you for forgetting to tell people that on your promotion, on your posters, or wherever you did to promote it, that one of the greatest overall wrestlers in the world is going to be here. Because I think me and you were talking, there was maybe 60, 70 people there, if that.
If that.
So shame on you. But I think basically what happens is kind of just getting the mindset of a wrestler is And it's great that, and I'm glad you did that research on Casey Owens, because she looks like she has potential here. And I'm glad that she's still working, and she, Ice Ribbon, WWE, NXT UK. So she's obviously working a lot of the bigger federations. So good on her. But I think this is how this came across to me is when they were putting this match together. Io was like, okay, what do you do? Or they were in the ring, maybe kind of just trying to see what they're going to do. And Io was like, okay, she can do A, B, C, and D. And that's about it. I'm not going to try to do, X, Y, Z. She can only do these couple things. We're going to focus on that. We're going to make sure the match makes sense. We're going to make sure nobody gets hurt. We're going to make sure the crowd has a good time. And basically, that's what happens. And it doesn't really get into like the high gear. Io does a good job, basically, making a basic match. There's great technical wrestling to start. There's a good stiff forearm exchange that once Io gets the advantage of, the crowd gets into it. And from there, they pretty much just take it home. Arm capture, German suplex for the win. Again, there was nothing bad about this match, but compared to every match that we see in this, where it's just like you see everything twice and it makes sense and it builds. Again, I think that Io just realized that she couldn't go too crazy in this just because I don't think Casey could keep up. But again, you see the potential. You see the potential, 5-6 years later. So again, this was solid. They both worked hard. I gave this 3.5 stars.
I think you were a little bit more generous than I was. I gave it 2 3/4. I don't know. I don't know whether it was the setting or whether it was, you could tell, or at least I thought I could tell that Io was on autopilot in this match. Nothing outstanding really in this match. It was solid, absolutely, and nothing went wrong, but they seem to be wrestling at two very different speeds initially, and I understand it's very difficult, and we're going to talk a little bit about that with the Kaylee Ray match next. There was moments, Io hitting the beautiful standing moonsault and the handstand knees, especially after she just blocked Casey's attempt at doing the very same move, but it felt very, very, very exhibition. There was no chance Io was losing the belt here, not in front of 12 people and a dog in a gymnasium in the middle of France. Especially, I couldn't keep my ears off the crowd. At points I realised I completely lost the match because at one point there was 3 different claps going at 3 different beats, which was really frustrating, especially as, that's like 12 people. How can you not clap in time? And secondly, one person, and I feel for this person, I really do, because they tried so hard to get a Fight Owens fight chant going. They must have tried 3 times, and he was the only one. He was the only one who even bothered. And then at one point, I think someone locked in a Boston Crab and he started chanting Y2J. And again, just on his own, it was a very, very, very sad state of affairs. You mentioning whoever forgot to promote this show, you're absolutely right. So someone needs to be shot for that because it was not promoted at all. That gym could have legitimately held 300 people, and I doubt there was a full 60 people there. Especially when they showed the hard cam footage, like, oh my God, there's just literally 10 people sat in a row. Oh, Jesus Christ. But yeah, this is nothing special, and I learned how to say the name of the event for pretty much no reason, Matt.
Me and Rob, to everybody listening out there, me and Rob do pretty well gel on everything and agree on everything, but I don't agree that anybody should be shot. So that's that.
I do not condone the shooting of people. Okay, got it.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe with the potato gun. Maybe that's.
We move on then to match 7, which of course is V6 for Io Shirai, and that will be against Kaylee Ray, Scotland's own, from 5-Star Grand Prix 2016 Night 8, once again from the hallowed halls of Korakuen Hall, with Io Shirai defeating Kaylee Ray in 13 minutes and 2 seconds. Matt, what did you think about this?
I was excited to watch this just because I've seen some of Kaylee Ray, and over the past 2 years, she's really been making her name for herself. Not only now on NXT, but NXT UK as well. She was the champion there for a very, very long time. So you can tell that how much better she's gotten in the last 5-6 years, because I thought this match was just okay. Good, not great. I did like how, again, we'll talk about Io selling. Kaylee Ray hits a huge dive onto Io, and Io sells her arm. Like when she took the bump, like, oh, my elbow hit the floor, to the point where they have to come over and get cold spray on her. So you're thinking, it's like, oh, is she really hurt? Io winds up coming back. Her comeback here is just brilliant, and it gets the crowd. The way she times her comeback and where she puts it in the match is just absolutely brilliant, because she knows she's going to get the most out of the crowd. And her comeback, she does, the springboard Josie dropkick, and then she winds up shaking off, her arm that hurts, hits some stiff forearms. Kaylee Ray winds up getting back on her. She goes for springboard, but Io counters with a German suplex, hits the straight jacket German suplex and the moonsault. Again, 2 big moves right in a row, and it gets a win. I gave this 3 3/4 star match, and this is a match that both of them are in, NXT right now, that I would like to see right now, because again, like we talked about the Casey Owen match, you can see the potential. And Casey Owens at this point in 2016 is way better than Casey Owens. But if this is a match that, just knowing how good Kaylee Ray is now and how great Io still is, this is a match that I would really, really like to see, somewhere soon today.
Yeah, you mentioned Kaylee Ray's run in NXT UK. She's the longest reigning WWE NXT UK Women's Champion, holding the belt for 649 days. I mean, something I wanted
she lost that belt to?
She lost the belt to Meiko Satomura.
Yeah, how about that for a little throwback?
See, there you go, man. There you go. It's all linked. It's all linked.
Connecting the dots.
Something that I thought here, it was between this and the Casey Owens match, but I noticed it here a lot more. Obviously here, I feel like Io was working a far quicker pace than she was against Casey Owens, because, I don't know, maybe she trusts Kaylee Ray a little bit more. But something I wanted to ask was, there's a little bit of miscommunication early on. Is that the language barrier? Have you ever had that issue? And if you have, how do you get around that?
Yeah, I mean, you can. That probably could be it. I mean, one of the greatest things I was ever taught in wrestling is when I was in Ring of Honor, Jim Cornette would always say, "Don't look like a deer in headlights." The crowd doesn't know what you're doing. Even if you're calling the entire match from A to Z, or you're calling the spot in the ring, the crowd doesn't know what you're supposed to do. So if you mess something up, grab a hold or hit a strike or taunt the crowd or do something, so this way the crowd forgets. They might not even know that you messed that up. So maybe that's what it was. It could have been a language thing, or maybe their timing was off just a little bit there. So that's basically, if you're asking what I would do when a spot gets messed up, I always go back to what Jim Cornette taught me 10, 11, 12 years ago, where he said, don't look like a deer in the headlights. Like, you messed up. Don't let them show that you messed up the magic trick. But that's obviously, I think that's what it could have been. It could have been a timing issue, or could have been just something, maybe that a spot got called, and maybe somebody thought they were at spot B and they're really at spot D. I mean, that happens time to time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit slow to start, definitely, and I think that probably had a little bit to do with it, but Ray does dominate early on. The suicide dive, the rolling Northern Lights suplex, and then she works Io's arm. Loved the way we get to the finish with Kaylee Ray going for a springboard off the middle rope, but Io catches her with a German suplex. It's a spot we see quite often now. I remember specifically Arisa and B. Priestley for the white belt doing that exact same spot, but it never ceases to impress me, and that's the one we got here. But again, Kaylee Ray kicks out of the bridging package German suplex that pinned Casey, and she does get hit with the moonsault, which is the first time we've seen the moonsault since the Mayu match. And ultimately does get V6. It's not a bad match. I mean, I gave it 3.5. It is better than the Casey Owens match. Complete agreement with you though, Matt. Like, Kaylee Ray, it's like night and day. She's good here, and there are moments, like I said, those rolling Northern Lights suplexes, the suicide dive, big somersault senton off the ropes. Her kicks look really, really good, and her offense looks crisp. She goes for a swanton bomb as well, and Io gets the knees up, which can't have been pleasant for Kaylee Ray. But she is going to get considerably better, obviously, the more reps she has, which is obviously how practice works. Also on this show, just a little bit of trivia. On this show, there would be a debut in Oedetai with Hana Kimura debuting against the team of Mayu, Momo Watanabe, and Jungle Kiona. Also on this show, with this being the 5-star Night 8, it was also the final of that year's 5-star Grand Prix, with Yoko Bito defeating Tessa Blanchard in the 5-star final. That's important because Io's next challenge would be the 5-star winner, Yoko Bito. And we're going to go on to that match now from Stardom. October Showdown, again from Korakuen Hall, with Io Shirai, the champion, defeating Yoko Bito in a whirlwind 19 minutes and 25 seconds. So a little bit of background. In 2012, Stardom original Yoko Bito retired from wrestling, citing an accumulation of neck and back injuries. At the time, she was one half of the Goddess of Stardom champions and was forced to vacate them as a result of her retirement. In June of 2016, Bito returned in the ring in a losing effort against Kairi Hojo, but despite this, she then took part and subsequently won, as I mentioned, the 2016 5-star Grand Prix, defeating Tessa Blanchard in the final, and then after winning the tournament, challenged Io for the red belt. Now, Matt, I know you are absolutely dying to talk about this match, but before I let you go, we had another debut on this show. Natsuka Tora debuted on this show, teaming with Arisu Nanas in a losing effort against Kaori Yoneyama and Azumi. So, the current roster, all debuting here.
Oh, how about that?
There you go. There you go. Don't say I don't do my research, people.
I never said that. I said you do almost too much research, which I love.
Anyway, I know you love this match, Matt, so off you go.
Yeah, I think I texted you as soon as the 3-count happened. I was like, I've never seen Yoko Bito wrestle before, but I think you told me when we were going to take this journey. You said, this is, I think you texted when we were talking. You said, I think this is going to be one of your hidden gems because I think you know the style of wrestling that I like. And Yoko Bito very much, I want to say maybe she inspired Momo Watanabe because there's a lot of little quirks, the way she throws her kicks, the way she sets up her kicks. Even she does the B driver as well as Momo. So maybe that was someone that inspired Momo, because I see a lot of Momo into well, obviously I've seen more Momo matches than Yoko, but obviously Yoko came before, so I think maybe that's where she got some of her stuff from. But yeah, this was an absolute sleeper, hidden gem match for me. Before we get started, Medusa is the special guest presentator of the World of Stardom belt. So right off the rip, for someone who has been watching American wrestling for well over 35 years, you see an absolute legend like Medusa, and someone who's, I believe, I don't know, main event of the Tokyo Dome, but has had a big match in the Tokyo Dome with, I believe, Bull Nakano. So that's a big get right there to have her, in the ring presenting the belt. Io refuses to shake Yoko Bito's hand, so Yoko starts right off with some fast, stiff strikes. They wind up basically anytime, how the psychology of this match is really working is anytime Yoko Bito gets the advantage on Io's experience cuts her off, and then 4 or 5 minutes later, it flips. Io will start getting an advantage, and then Yoko Bito will start using her strikes to cut Io off. So I thought that was pretty cool. Like if you're watching a game, like you see this team that's constantly scoring, and somebody's trying to come back, they wind up cutting them off, and then the second half it kind of flips, which kind of keeps it even. There's a sick B driver that Yoko hits Io out on the floor for a 19 count, almost a count out. We see a lot of this, and Io's very good at teasing, almost taking a very dangerous move on the outside and almost getting counted out, and the crowd buys it. The crowd buys it. Again, Io knows where she has to put her stuff. And the psychology of this works perfect because she gets planted with the B driver on the outside. And then the basically the big tease finish for Yoko, she hits a B drive, 2 back-to-back B drivers onto Io, which the second one I thought she was going to cave her neck in. I just cringed. That was sick. 1-2, 2.9. Io kicks out, and then Io reverses, and she gets a final fatal flurry. She just hits these back and forth, left and right, stiff palm strikes, then hits a big forearm. Yoko sells around, arm captured German suplex, moonsault for the win. This was, I can't wait to go back into Stardom World or the litany of Stardom DVDs. I have to watch more of Yoko Bito. I gave this 4.5 stars. I absolutely love this match. This one completely caught me off guard of how much I was going to like it.
It's the first time we see a more aggressive edge of Io in the way she fights Yoko. And obviously the turn and the creation of Queen's Quest is, 2 weeks away at this point. So I don't know about you, but I thought it was very, very obvious the way that Io was ramping up the aggression in this match. Did you find that?
Yeah, now that you make sense, you can kind of see where she's going to kind of go towards the heel turn. And I thought maybe part of that is because she kind of had to. You know, when you're fighting someone with all that fire, you kind of have to fight back with fire. But yeah, I mean, you see it right from the jump when Io refuses to shake her hand. I mean, this is someone that just won the 5-star Grand Prix. She just won this tournament to earn the title shot. It's not like, well, she won one random match or she won like a battle royal or something. She went through this grueling tournament to get her title shot. And the first thing Io does is when the ring is just dismisses her. Just absolutely dismisses her, which basically lights a fire right into Yoko. Into she starts the stiff exchange. So basically, right right when the bell rings, we kind of already get the psychology, and the personalities, planted into the match.
I mean, it is a fantastic match. I mean, from Io Shirai countering a B driver into a code red, to the work that Shirai does on Bito's leg, to Bito baiting Io into coming outside the ring by taking too long to get back in. Io's like, no, she needs to get back in, goes out, and Bito hits her with a B driver on the outside. Absolutely fantastic. We get brainbuster, slingshot suplexes, and then we get Bito countering out of a package bridging German suplex, but then Io counters it flawlessly into an inverted figure 4 leg lock. It's beautiful. And Bito is in this hold for absolutely ages. And Bito just won't stay down. And because of that, the crowd are so invested. And there's a spot which I'm never going to get sick of seeing if it's timed perfectly like it was here. There's a moment where Bito goes for the doll kick. And as she does it, Shirai collapses in exhaustion. And because she collapses in exhaustion, Bito misses the kick. And it's such an underrated spot. There's a moment in one of the Omega and Okada matches, I think it's the time limit draw, where Okada goes for the Rainmaker and Omega just falls to his knees because he's that exhausted. So Okada misses it. And it's such an emotional role. I love it. It's one of my favorite bits in wrestling. But yeah, what a hidden gem. This is hard hitting. It's got that added extra aggression of Io, that lack of respect for Yoko Bito, whether it's because, she's been gone a long time, you retired, you're weak, and then, you come back and you think you can just challenge for my title. No, that's not the way it works. That was sort of the impression I got, which led to, the fire lit underneath Bito, and then we get this absolutely fantastic match, and then Io properly kicking off towards the end of the match and really, really going after Bito's leg. Post-match, of course, they embrace, and Bito has earned Io's respect, but those 2 consecutive B drivers, it garners the most ridiculous 2 count. When we are doing a retrospective on a title reign that I know lasts 14 title defenses, and in match 7 I'm biting on a pinfall, that shows how good it is. That shows how good the timing is.
That's how good wrestling can be when you have a promotion that will let wrestlers do what they do best, and that's absolutely wrestle. And that's exactly what these 2 did here. And again, you talk about the 2 B drivers, and it's all set up from the one outside. So Io eats 3 of them. 3 of them in this match that are all like, oh man. But yeah, she has to embrace the ugly side to get that final flurry in order to get the win here.
Yeah, there's just moments where Bito is the perfect underdog in this match, and it's so well done, and it's by no means the longest match, but they managed to cram so much into that 19 minutes, and that's another testament to both women. So yeah, 4.5 stars I think is more than fair. Between this and the next defense, which is against Taya Valkyrie, which we'll be talking about in a minute, there's obviously a huge shifting in the roster in the world of Stardom. Now, tension been growing in Thunder Rock since their loss of the Goddess of Stardom Championship to Oida Tai's Kyoko Kimura and Kagetsu in June, with Mayu eating the pin. Since then, there's been just a little subtle build of this tension between the 2 friends. On the 11th of November 2016, having topped their block in the Goddess of Stardom Tag League, Thunder Rock then lost the final to Kairi Hojo and Yoko Bito, with Mayu again taking the pin. That was apparently too much for Io. The tension boiled over, and Io attacked Mayu with the help of a returning Hazuki, turning heel and saying that Stardom had gone soft, lacking a killer instinct that she wanted to teach to the younger generation of Stardom, namely Hazuki and later Momo Watanabe, who herself turned her back on Mayu Iwatani to join Io and Hazuki during the tag team main event of the show on the 20th of November. Even though they would effectively be Queen's Quest, the name Queen's Quest wasn't officially used until just after this Taya Valkyrie match on the 27th. So that's all happened before this Taya Valkyrie match. So in chronological order, this has happened. From this point on, Io is a heel, and obviously this plays in a little more into V9. But V8 saw Io take on Taya Valkyrie in the Stardom Goddesses of Stars Tour Night 2 on the 23rd of November, defeating Taya in Fukuoka in 17 minutes and 11 seconds. The first championship defense of this reign for Io, aside from the alpha female one, to take place outside of Korakuen Hall, of those defenses that took place on Japanese soil. Matt,
Yes.
I wasn't a huge fan of this match, and I text you as such during the match. What did you think?
Yeah, I was kind of the same. Again, when I wrote everything down of the matches and whatnot, this one that jumped off the page for me, because I'm a big fan of Taya Valkyrie. Obviously, I'm a ginormous fan of Io Shirai. And you have the Wonder of Stardom champion, the World of Stardom champion, probably the best women's wrestler on the planet and one of the top overall wrestlers on the planet. And then you have Taya Valkyrie, who I believe going in this was the AAA Reina del Reyes champion. And I know she was wrestling in Impact, and she was the champion there for so long, off and on, so she might have been the champion or just coming off a long reign. And her stuff on Impact was fantastic. But this one was just, you kind of just see this, like, oh, this is, and I think I text you back. I'm like, on paper in 2016, even today, this is an absolute surefire dream match. And you can kind of tell when the match was starting, something was off, even in Io's facial expressions. And maybe because now she's going into this heel persona, but you can kind of tell she was annoyed with Taya. And coming from a wrestler's perspective, maybe it was, well, I'm trying out this new persona, and maybe it just wasn't clicking, or maybe they were calling stuff in the back and Io didn't like it, or maybe, again, and you alluded to this, maybe Taya just couldn't keep up, because it just seemed like the first half of the match, the two of them were just off. And by no means was it bad, but again, you look at this match on paper, and this one should have been 4.5 to 4 3/4 stars match in your head. And to me, it was a little below 4 stars. Again, it wasn't bad by any means, but I just think that when you see these two on paper, that this was going to be a dream match, and I think it fell short. And I really don't even have too much, other than what we talked about, in text or whatever. I don't have too much on this match, because it was just like Taya just couldn't seem to keep up. And I love, again, this is no disrespect to Taya. Taya is phenomenal. She's everything. She's great in the ring, but just didn't seem like she can keep up with Io. And then Io, towards the end of the match, back end of the match, had to kind of slow things down. There was some really good back and forth striking. And again, there wasn't just really much to the match. Arm capture German, and then she winds up hitting the 3 moonsaults for the win. Again, I had this just a shade below 4 stars at 3 3/4.
Yeah, I don't know whether, like you said, obviously both of them were attempting to wrestle as heels. I mean, personal preference, I don't really like Taya Valkyrie's style. Admittedly, I only saw her Impact stuff in her doomed NXT run as Frankie Monet, but she's just never been my cup of tea as an in-ring performer. That's not to say she's bad by any stretch of the imagination, because I know she's not, and I haven't seen any of her run in AAA, so it might just be a clash of styles. I don't know. But Matt, I don't know whether it was because it almost seemed the ring was too small, because she'd be running the ropes, and there was one point where she sort of got to the ropes, and how close she was to the ropes seemed to surprise her, and she sort of stopped and then came off the ropes, but she was always a step behind Io. It got better as we got through the match. Taya catches Io's crossbody into a fall-away slam. She's got the greatest named finisher in the Road to Valhalla. That is a great finisher name. But I don't know. I don't know whether it was just one of those matches that didn't click or whether, like I say, just a little bit of communication breakdown like we talked about in the Kaylee Ray and Casey Owens match. But obviously, Taya misses her own moonsault, and then Io hits the package bridging German suplex, hits 3 moonsaults for her own victory. But it's certainly not one that jumps off the page as one you need to go and see. I feel like this one is for completionists only, Matt.
Yeah, and maybe now I'm sitting here thinking about it. Maybe it was the ring was too small, and maybe that's what threw them off. Not only that, but if you look at the ring, it looks like they were like wrestling on tarp, and maybe that threw the footing off as well. I mean, and like I said, it didn't. They got the back end of this match, the last 5 or 6 minutes is actually really, really good. But it's almost to a point where you're kind of just tuned out because it just seems like maybe they just click, and maybe it's just the styles clash. Again, like when you're writing down these 16 matches, you're like, oh, that's like 5. That's one of the ones. If I can only watch 5 or 6, and that you've never seen these matches before, you figure that's a lot of people. One that a lot of people would want to circle. You have the champion over in Mexico and a champion over here. Champion in Japan. You figure that's when they want to see, and it just missed the mark. It just missed. Again, it wasn't a bad match, but just knowing what the two of them can do, it was kind of disappointing.
Yeah, that black canvas was a real jarring experience after seeing the white of Stardom's ring canvas, sort of wrestling on a bin bag. But I thought it was important. Just the last thing I'm going to talk about in terms of this match. There was a moment, obviously, the pre-match promos, where literally the only thing that Io says is the 8th title defense, and then walks off. So even though she might not have had the best opportunity in this match to display how heel she is trying to be, the difference in demeanor and general mannerisms is completely different to how she was before, and that obviously manifests into this next match, which comes at the end of 2016. It's Stardom year-end climax, 22nd of December, against Mayu Iwatani, and again, Io wins at Korakuen Hall in 17 minutes and 11 seconds, the exact same runtime as the Taya match and the shortest of the Io and Mayu trilogy. This one genuinely might be my favourite match, not only of the trilogy, but of the run in general, just because it is absolutely furious. I mean, in complete contrast to a promo in their previous encounter where she jumped all over the map, sort of embodying that nervousness and that anxiety. Mayu said maybe 6 words, and there was venom behind every single word she said. And you can tell that there's growth in Iwatani before this match. She actually has some sort of a plan she did not have in that first match, Matt.
Yeah, you can tell right off the get-go. Obviously, I mean, if this was the plan, let's turn Io heel, so this way it gives Mayu one of the top babyface spots, and it gives her a reason to be more aggressive. Where you can say, and we just alluded to a little bit ago, one of the reasons why Io was able to beat Mayu is because she's just not aggressive enough. She's not aggressive enough, and this basically she has to bring out the aggression in it, because 1, she wants to win the title, and 2, hey, you just turned on me. You just turned on me. We're part of, Freedom. We're part of Thunder Rock. We were, we held all the belts, and you just turned on me. So now you add that extra wrinkle in, plus the fact that these two are absolutely fantastic in the ring. And it's very rare that you see 2 individuals in pro wrestling that have such great chemistry, not only as tag partners, but as opponents as well. And these two, man, they have great chemistry. I mean, right off the rip, we were talking about Mayu. She has to be more aggressive. She refuses to shake Io's hand, which Io kind of just in jest, slaps her. Basically Io sells her back, and Mayu right off the get, she tried to go for a German suplex. Right off the get go. Obviously, Mayu's very aggressive. Dragon suplexes all around. 1 on the floor, 1 on the apron. She does not want to tease that 19 count. We keep seeing Io with this barely getting at the 19 count because she doesn't want to give her any time to rest. Throws her in the ring, hits another dragon suplex in the ring for a near fall. She goes for the top rope reverse Rana. Io winds up countering it because she knows that move. She knows that's one of Mayu's bread and butter. She counters it into a German suplex for another near fall. then they wind up going back and forth. Mayu's on the aggressor on this one here. I mean, she got a lot of this match. Io, not that Mayu needs any help, but Io does a great job making Mayu Iwatani look like an absolute star in this match. And again, she didn't need much help, but any help that she needed, Io definitely gave it to her. So she goes for the top rope dragon suplex. Io winds up countering. She lands on her feet into the locomotion German suplex, which if that was the finish, I'm like, that's a perfect match. But she winds up kicking out. Io hits a dragon suplex and then a moonsault. And then Mayu Iwatani, who it only took one moonsault to beat her the prior match, she gets hit with a dragon suplex and the moonsault. She kicks out not at 2, but at 1. She fires up with the super kick, hits another dragon suplex, kicks out. She decides to go for the tombstone onto Io. Io reverses it, hits a tombstone of herself, and then hits 2 moonsaults for the win. I said during the Meiko Satomura match, this might be the best women's match I've ever seen. Here we are, about literally a year later, right? December to December. And I'm like, that might have been the best women's match I've ever seen. This might be, again, it's so debatable because it's so good. This one, to me, is slightly the best match of all these matches we're going to cover. Not by much. I mean, there's so much you can throw out there. This is another easy 5 stars. If we're going to break the Meltzer scale, this is 5.5 stars. This is absolutely perfect. And pro wrestling is one of the only sports that you can win by losing. By that, I mean, Mayu lost this match, but she comes out thinking, I think everybody, from the fans to the wrestlers to the bookers to the promoters, I think they were, at this point they're thinking, we can put the belt on. They can do a rematch tomorrow and put the belt on her, and everybody would buy it because she just looked like an absolute star. And again, a lot of that has to do with this Io just being so giving, so caring, giving her such a big portion of the match, just eating dragon suplex after dragon suplex. And hey, by the way, I've been beating everybody with this 1 moonsault. How about if you kick out at 1? Like, hello, just absolutely phenomenal storytelling in this one. I can't say enough of good. Go out of your way to see this match. If you enjoy good things in life, like clean air and good wrestling and good food, you will enjoy this match.
What a glowing indictment. Completely agree with you. I mean, I love the fact that this match only went 17 minutes because it proper gets across the brutality and the aggression and everything that both women throw at each other in this, because it is a significant step up in the brutality. I mean, if I had one word, though, to describe this match, it's growth. Because Mayu's growth from match 1 to match 2 of this trilogy is phenomenal. She thinks out her offense far more. She's not overthinking it, which she was guilty of in several occasions of that first match. She's nowhere near as frenetic. She just ups the brutality on the person. And don't forget, it's not just her tag team partner. It's not just her fellow Threedom member. It's her best friend, basically her sister, this person who looked after her when she left everything to become a wrestler. And she's turned her back on her. So that level of brutality, that venom, is more than justified. Io is fantastic in her targeting of Mayu's leg once again, and it's a complete subversion to what she did in the previous match. She wraps it in a chair and drop kicks it. Mayu tries to go for Io's neck to weaken it for the 2-step dragon suplex. But, I mean, it's added to so much in this match by Mayu's ability to play the underdog babyface and Io's ability to play the arrogant ace figure who still has no respect. And it just means that the dynamic works to a T. Even down to Io doubling back so that she could make sure she could tread on Mayu before hitting a moonsault. She didn't just tread on her and then go. She walked past her, doubled back, and then stood on Mayu, making a conscious effort to do it. Just a small thing, but beautiful. And in the first match, Io hit a tombstone to set up for the moonsault. She tries it again, but Mayu reverses it. She's showing growth from the last match, adding to the fact that Mayu had that plan built from the previous match. Admittedly, Io reversed that and hits it, but it's the thought that counts. There's other examples, of course. Mayu blocking the suicide dive by literally just kneeling behind the apron, which I thought was quite funny. Catching the tiger feint kick, etc. And again, as you mentioned, Matt, it takes 2 moonsaults to finish Mayu off this time. And not only did it take 2 moonsaults, but Mayu kicked out of the first one at 1. So that growth is evident, and it's so well done in this match. They're two completely different matches. And Mayu is hot after this match and says to Shirai that she better not lose that red belt because she is going to be the one to take it from her. And then Kairi Hojo enters the ring and diffuses all tension by looking ridiculously awkward, which is fine, I suppose. But yeah, I give this 5 stars. It is a tremendous match, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I keep going to it. She kicks out of the moonsault at 1. She fires up and then kicks Io right in the face. Like, hello, like, if that's not a stamp of approval, like, this is our next star. This is our future, right here. I don't know what is.
It's great. It is great. So we move into the new year, 2017, with Io Shirai still champion on V9. She's looking for her 10th successive title defense. Of course, her last run with the belt, she had 10 title defenses, which was the record at the time. So she's looking to break the record or tie the record she set herself. And that opponent for the Stardom 6th anniversary show on the 15th of January would be none other than Viper. And again, at Korakuen Hall, Io Shirai would defeat Viper in 19 minutes and 58 seconds. And again, very similar to the Yoko Bito match. Matt, I know you love this match, so off you go.
This is the match I'm probably most excited to talk about. I mean, it didn't get my highest rated, but just because it's such a sleeper of a match and such a gem, just to give you in the mindset of how I watched this match. I just got done watching the match we just talked about. So you're just like, wow, I mean, they did everything. I mean, you heard my glowing recommendation. So I'm like, okay, let's watch the Viper match. And I figured, this will be good. It's Io Shirai and Viper's really good, but it's going to be nowhere near as good as the Mayu match. And it's not, well, I don't want to say near as good, but I mean, the psychology in it is it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Viper is working over Io's back, and she's working over Io's back. And anytime Io gets any advantage, she just goes right after the back. She hits a splash onto the apron. She's doing the Argentina backbreaker. She's just working over Io's back, and Io's selling is spot on. You can tell when selling is working when you have the crowd that invested. And the crowd here is so invested in Io making her comeback. And anytime Io would hit a strike or get behind Viper, she's going for the German suplex. She's trying to get this German suplex, and she can't get it. She just can't. She goes for it 3 or 4 times. She just can't get it because, 1, Viper is obviously bigger than her, and 2, she's just getting her back worked over. The psychology is so simple, but it makes so much sense, and the crowd is so invested. So Viper winds up hitting several near falls, including she's a Mijinoku driver, which I believe is one of her finishers. She gets a 2 count on it. A lot of the crowd bought it. A lot of the crowd thought that might have been the finish, that they were going to see a title change here. So Viper decides, what else can I do? Let me take this being Io Shirai. She's thrown everything at me, and I throw everything off her. And let me take her to the top rope. And she puts her up on her shoulders like she's going to give her a top rope DVD. And Io fights out of it and hits an absolute perfect top rope hurricanrana. She follows that up with an absolute perfect moonsault. 2 thoughts crossed my head as soon as she hit that moonsault. 1, wow, that's a great finish. Oh, what a great finish. This is 4 1/4 stars easy. Thought number 2, Rob, that came through my head was, man, that's a great finish, but how awesome would it be if Io just hit that German suplex that not only I wanted to see, but that Io wanted, and that this packed crowd wanted to see. Well, she picks her up, and not only does she give her a German suplex, she holds on. She fights through the pain. The psychology of building up this one move. She fights through it, and she hits her with 1 German suplex, holds on into the arm capture German suplex for the 1, 2, 3. Now, we talked about how the moonsault is Io's best move, and she should use 9 times out of 10, she should use that to win matches. But this is the 1 time out of 10 that the psychology not only makes sense, but it's better. She did hit the moonsault, but they built up the German suplex, and Io's beat up back, and the fact that she can't hit the German suplex, that she hits the beautiful, beautiful moonsault, and you have the crowd at an all-time high, and the only time you can get them higher is when you go back to that psychology, and you hit not 1, but 2 perfect suplexes. This was great. This was 4 3/4 star for me. This is one of the ultimate hidden gems, not only in Stardom, but of all pro wrestling. This was a match. Anybody that's studying professional wrestling that wants to learn the little ins and outs of selling and how to build stuff up, you need to go out of your way to see this match. This was fantastic.
Honestly, these two have tremendous chemistry together. And as much as we talked about Viper's first challenge, she might be the perfect big person for Io to fight. Because honestly, everything you said was right. I was so invested in this match, and Io did such a fantastic job of selling that back injury and the work that Viper relentlessly did. Everything was going back to the back, whether it was the rack attack, whether it was the suplex, whether it was hitting her back with the cannonball. It was all like the cannonball to the back when Io's missed those double knees. Horrendous. I mean, there was, it might be the greatest sell I've ever seen, where the two are exchanging forearms and Viper decapitates Io with a clothesline, and she does a full 360 and lands. And I'm like, well, that's it. Io's dead. That's it now, isn't it? It's done. Maybe she doesn't get to V14. And just everything that they did together was perfect. Everything they did together worked really, really well. Io does need to stop springboarding because apparently it is part of every match that she must get caught springboarding with some sort of forearm. So maybe Io needs to go back and watch her own tapes, but there we are.
It's in her contract, I think, Rob.
Okay, well, there you go then. There you go. She's contracted to hit at least one springboard per match. They did the quintessential Ric Flair spot, which made me laugh. I was like, oh, they did the duck clothesline on the apron. Loved it. But genuinely, all jokes aside, this match is exactly like Matt said, a real hidden gem in this run, and Viper does a fantastic job. And it's no wonder, really, that Io tries to recruit her and successfully recruits her eventually for Queen's Quest. But before we get to there, Shirai's call for her 11th opponent after she's put over Viper's strength. Former UFC fighter Shayna Baszler comes out and chokes Io out, leaving a playing card on her because she's the Queen of Spades. Viper then comes to Io's rescue but gives a non-committal answer to Io's invitation to join Queen's Quest. July 30th, Viper will join Queen's Quest at a second invitation, but just before we get there, Io then asks who Shayna thinks she is, some sort of magician. That might be the greatest put down of a challenge ever, which I thought was extremely funny. But yes, I agree with you. I give it 4.5. I thought everything they could have done, they did really, really well. We move on to V11, successive challenge number 11, which is Io Shirai's chance to break her own record, and it came in Stardom of Champions 2017, again at Korakuen Hall on the 23rd of February, and she defeated Shayna Baszler to retain her championship in 16 minutes and 45 seconds. Now, I mentioned at the start of the podcast and when we were off air, Matt, about how much I was like, this could go one of two ways simply because of Shayna's hilariously inconsistent booking in the WWE. But I thought this was really, really good and might, for me, be the hidden gem of this run.
Yeah, you're not too far off. I'm a huge Shayna Baszler fan. Obviously, she has the shoot experience, the UFC experience, trained by Josh Barnett with a lot of sprinkling of the greatest catch teacher of all time, Billy Robinson. So actually, when you little side note here, when you watch Shayna Baszler when she does her entrance, when she puts her one foot on the step and she does like the cross and she points at the sky, that's her talking to Billy Robinson. So
there you go.
Yeah, there you go. This was just another a great match. Shayna's, her current booking, it is what it is. Her run in NXT was phenomenal. I mean, she had a huge feud with Kairi Hojo. So, obviously this her stuff goes way back here. But yeah, they started out fast with strikes, really good submission exchanges. Eventually, Shayna Baszler, obviously, because that's her bread and butter, she winds up catching Io. She gets the advantage. She has Io in a second rope. She's basically sitting on the top rope, and she has Io in a chokehold. obviously is illegal, so she has to break it at 4. And at that point, Io knows that if she's going to win this match, she's going to have to kind of almost play Shayna's games a little. She's going to have to get a little bit aggressive. So you see Io coming back with a whole bunch of kicks, palm strikes, forearms. The two of them are going back and forth. Shayna's working on Io's arm, which leads to the psychology of Io hits a beautiful German suplex, and not only does Shayna kick out, but she winds up locking in the double wrist lock, which plays into a little bit later on towards the match. Io winds up hitting the moonsault, but can't take the pin because when she landed on that arm that Shayna was working on. So eventually she gets the cover. It's a sloppy cover. It's after time has elapsed. So Shayna winds up kicking out. Eventually they go back and forth again. Io winds up hitting the tombstone. Again, I love these. Love it when she's hitting 2 big moves in a row. She winds up firing up, shaking off the pain from the arm. Crowd's well invested. Hits the tombstone. Moonsault combination for the win. I had this at 4.25 stars. And yeah, this is just an absolute another hidden gem in this run.
It goes some way to show just how far Baszler pushed Io, that Io had no intention of, with all the pageantry of trying to stand on her opponent and then hitting the moonsault. She scarpers to the top rope and hits that final moonsault because she knows she cannot afford to give any leeway to Baszler at all. And this match itself is so different to anything else in this run in the way that Baszler is slow and meticulous in her destruction of Io's arm. It's one of the best sort of single limb focuses of this entire run. Like, Baszler, to start off with, is so imperious in the way she takes apart Io. And Io tries to play Shayna's game. She lets her get into submissions and then tries to transition them into roll-ups so that she can get out of them. But eventually, the work that Baszler's doing is just slowly but surely sort of breaking her down. And we're used to Shayna Baszler doing these fantastic submissions and locking people in these horribly brutal submissions at times, but some of the suplexes she hits in this, that gut-wrench suplex off the top rope, and then she maintains control and hits another, just fantastic. And then Io has got this entire storyline of trying to hit Baszler's back to try and weaken her, so obviously she hits that second gut-wrench suplex, can't do the cover because of all the work that Io has done on it. Genuinely a really, really good match. And I'd go as far as to say one of Shayna's best. The only thing that was a little bit annoying for me was Shayna's constant arguing with the ref. I mean, I could have done without that. We could have found a different way to distract Baszler, maybe her overconfidence leading to a mistake or something like that. But even so, Baszler transitioning an armbar into a Texas Cloverleaf was also a real highlight for me. Genuinely one of my favourite matches of this run. V11 for Io Shirai, 4.25 from me as well. Io then calls out for her next challenge, gets inundated with challenges because Kagetsu, Kairi, Hojo, and Toni Storm all come out. Io is shattered, so gets a chair and makes them all plead their cases for the belt, which seems extremely condescending, but works as she's being a heel, I suppose. Kairi says she defended the white belt successfully against Chelsea Green, and said that they should have a double title match. Toni says that she beat Io for the SWA belt, which she did back in 2016, which is a valid claim. Kagetsu gets an enormous reception, considering she's the new leader of Oedo Tai, but she says she's never faced Io before in a one-on-one setting, and that a match versus Kagetsu is more interesting than versus Kairi or Toni. Even though Io agrees, she tells Kagetsu to bow down to the Queen, gets really over the top, sort of Charlotte Flair levels of condescension. Kagetsu pretends to and then beats Io up, and that's how we get to our next match, and that next match is against the aforementioned Kagetsu. Stardom champions around the world in Nagoya from Nagoya International Conference Hall Event Hall from the 5th of March 2017, with Io Shirai defeating Kagetsu in 13 minutes and 28 seconds. Now, I don't think I'm at a line here, Matt. I might be, but I don't think I am. I wasn't a huge fan of this match. You hear Io Shirai, you hear Kagetsu, you automatically assume, like you were talking about earlier with Taya Valkyrie, you assume that this match is going to be an absolute barn burner. And for me, it wasn't really. And I don't know if that's something to do with how this match wasn't the main event of the show. The Goddesses of Stardom Championship match with the champions, with the team of Hiroya Matsumoto and Jungle Kiona defeating the champions of Kairi, Hojo, and Yoko Bito, being placed above it. Probably because it was Jungle Kiona's hometown and it was the catharsis of her winning a first title win in the company. I don't know if that's why they didn't go all out in this match, or honestly, I don't know. It didn't quite click for me.
I see your point, and maybe that's what it was. Maybe they said, well, hold back just maybe a little bit, to leave them something for the main event so they get the huge pop there. But to me, it just seemed like maybe Kagetsu just at this point just really wasn't ready for that top spot. Like, let's give her a little bit, so this way it puts a little bit of stock into it, and then we'll kind of stop. But Io, to me, in this match, does a really good job making Kagetsu look really good. She takes a lot of big bumps. She's taking bumps on the floor. She's taking, big bumps in the ring. She winds up taking the Death Valley Driver bomb onto, I believe, like the suitcase, like the Oedo tie. I think it's like standard for every match. She takes a lot of big bumps here. But yeah, it just seemed like maybe if it got 5 or 6 more minutes and it was the main event, they could have maybe strung it out a little bit longer. I didn't think it was a bad match at all. I rated it 4 stars. I thought it was really good. It just seemed like it was kind of start, stop. And then once with like maybe the last like 2.5 minutes, then they really got going here, because it just seemed like Io was fighting from behind just from all the stuff from Oedo Tai. It seemed like she was constantly on the cell, which is fine. Again, it was to get maybe Kagetsu over. You can say, hey, I took the champ to the limit in this match, but Io, the way she built, like my favorite part in the match is the way she builds her comeback. Like she has to have some sort of like really tight comeback, because like anytime she's trying to build any momentum, she's constantly being cut off by dastardly attacks. So the way like she builds her comeback is like she just throws these, and you see this as you're watching this Reign build, these uppercut palm strikes that look like they're just going to take your head off. And I think it's just genius. Where she puts it, how she times it, how she sells it in her face. The apron, she was doing a German suplex on the apron, which I thought was nice. Throws her back into the ring, and then she gets the arm capture German, which I thought was going to be the finish, just by the way it was built. Kagetsu winds up kicking out. Eventually, Io gets the tombstone moonsault combination for the win. Yeah, I see your point. You figured this would have been more along the lines of 4.5 stars. Again, for me, this was a solid 4 stars, and I think the main thing to take from it was just Io did a lot in this. She was a lot on the defensive to make Kagetsu look good. And again, maybe she wasn't just there just yet. They weren't sure if they were ready to kind of go all in on Kagetsu just yet.
I mean, I do see your point, and I liked how initially Kagetsu's basically trying to wind Io up, trying to get in ahead. And there's one point where Kagetsu's in the corner, and Io tries to use the ropes to get elevation for the knees in the corner, but way overshoots it and ends up headbutting the top of the ring post, which looked incredibly painful, but she does it again correctly, and we'll play it off as Kagetsu getting in ahead. I think the thing that bothered me in this is Kagetsu assaults Io's back. Like, works it and works it and works it. And Io, who we've complimented throughout this entire run for the way she sells and makes her opponent look fantastic, no-sells all that damage completely and does the handspring dropkick. And it took me out of the match. She does the kip up as well, which, yes, I understand that it's for the crowd and, it's to pump the crowd up ready for that comeback. But when you've got Kagetsu having done all this work on the back, to then have it, and literally it was the next move, it sort of distracted me from everything else that happened, which is a shame, because there were good parts of this. I mean, like you mentioned, Kagetsu hitting the Abisu drop onto the suitcase, then hitting a second one, but Io kicks out. You've got Kagetsu literally deadlifting a comatose Io into a vertical suplex, which is hella impressive. But that moment, the work with the back, and I know it's a really small moment, and I should just get the hell over it. But
no, you're now that I'm thinking about it, Alex, you're exactly right. But go ahead, Rob, finish. No, you're exactly right.
It did really take me out of the match, because I am a selling nerd. If you're gonna work a limb, make it feel like part of the finish. I feel like if you've done all that work, which is why I'm such a Switchblade Jay White fan, because he works a limb and then will target that for the finish. Whereas here, it was back work that was then ignored. There was then a little bit more back work, but by then, nobody cared because they were like, Io's in completely imperious mood today, therefore it's not going to matter. Which took away from the overall match, which is a shame because, I mean, I gave it 3 3/4. It was a good match, but for me, a little disappointing.
Yeah, I can see you're talking about the selling on the back, and then Io, she does the handstand and everything. It's just like, well, if you did all that work, your back shouldn't be one thing. Like what we talked about in the Viper match, if it's literally the final thing, like if you do something to build up to it, but like the fact that they just happened, like you did all this back work, and then right after that Io kind of just almost like no sells it. Yeah, I can kind of take the crowd out of it, but if you kind of not no sell, but like, okay, towards the end of the match, it's like, all right, let me just grit down, let me just, bite down on my lip, and let me, pick Kagetsu up. My back is killing me, but let me hit this German suplex or this moonsault, or say she hits the the finish with the tombstone moonsault, but say she hits the tombstone and she's crawling to the top rope, and you see her firing up, and she's got to block out that pain just for a few more seconds, just to get the moonsault in. It would have meant that much more. It would have had that much more bigger pop. So yeah, I totally see what you're getting at here, and that's probably what took the crowd out of the match. And yeah, now that you're talking about it, seems like it took you out a little bit out of the match as well.
Definitely. And again, I'm a huge Kagetsu fan. I miss Kagetsu in today's Stardom, like pretty much every Stardom fan. And of course, I'm a huge Io fan. So I wanted this match to be fantastic. And there were moments, as I've mentioned before, but just that moment, just a little bit more build-up. A little bit more build-up, a little bit more adrenaline being built up so that you can argue, do you know what? She did the kip up, but it's because of the adrenaline that she's got, because she's now on top. But instead, it just seemed to be, it was too jarring for me, basically.
Kind of like how we just said a few minutes ago in the Viper match. She hits that moonsault, now she's got adrenaline going, and then she hits the two Germans back-to-back, and it just completely explodes the place. And yeah, I think that if they kind of just took that no-selling spot and put it towards the end, and arrange a few more things, they would have got more out of the match. So, yeah, I agree with you.
So we move on from Kagetsu, and now Io is working her way through the other two challengers who challenged her in Korakuen Hall. The first of which is a rematch against Kairi Hojo, which was at Stardom the Highest 2017, once again at Korakuen Hall on the 20th of March 2017, with Io defeating Kairi in 22 minutes and 38 seconds. This is the last installment of what is one of Stardom's most well-known rivalries. Kairi had previously defeated Io on night 4 of the 2016 5-Star Grand Prix, which would prove costly, as Shirai then finished second in the block behind Tessa Blanchard by 1 solitary point. At this point, Kairi held the white belt going into this match, having dethroned Santana Garrett in May of 2016, but this match, despite what Kairi had actually asked for, was only solely for Io's red belt. After this match, Kairi would then drop the white belt to Mayu Iwatani at Stardom Gold May 2017, a single day short of a year-long reign, and then she'd go on to leave the company on June 4th and have a frustratingly inconsistent time in WWE. To differentiate this from the last Kairi Hojo match back on the 5th anniversary show, there's no frenetic start like in their previous encounter. Instead, it's cagey, as though Kairi knows that if she goes gung-ho into this match, she's going to lose. That shows when she loses the initial test of strength, and she loses it, obviously, smacks the mat and runs at Io, only to be outmaneuvered. Again, this leads to an almost panicked desperation in Kairi that lasts for the remainder of the match. She has to win this, and you can see that in everything she does in this match, Matt.
Yeah, you can tell, she's kind of taking her time, but eventually, I don't like to swear, but eventually shit breaks down and it gets a little crazy. They start pitching each other into chairs. Io hits an insane elbow from the inside outside, almost like a dive, to Io and pretty much the entire Stardom roster, which is a really cool visual. Eventually, Io, gets back on top of Kairi. they wind up fighting in the crowd, and then Io does her patented moonsault off the I guess the entranceway there. That just absolutely blows my mind. I mean, I know there's a lot of people there to catch her, but I mean, we've seen a couple people do these crazy dives off that. I mean, one slip, one wrong way. If you overshoot, you're going to wind up in the 10th row. If you undershoot, you're going to wind up in the concession stands, rolling down the entranceway there. I mean, yeah, this is a completely different match because they wind up getting crazy aggressive with all the crazy stuff that they wind up doing, and it kind of makes sense, at this point. She's supposed to be a heel, but it's just how do you boo her? How do you just boo her for just how good she is in the ring? Once again, Kairi winds up once they get back into the action in the actual ring where you can win the match. Kairi eventually gets the advantage. Insane elbow. Io kicks out of here again, which is it just seems like Io won't give Kairi she won't give her the satisfaction. She beat her with it once before, and then when the belt was vacated, she kicked out of it. In the previous match, she kicks out of here again. Kairi winds up kicking out of a huge German suplex, and then she winds up getting hit with the the tombstone and the moonsault for the win. I think this was their best match in my opinion, and this one was just a shade below 5 stars. I gave this one 4 3/4. Again, this was absolutely incredible. Incredible, completely different match from what they had before, just because the dynamic was different, and you could just see how desperate Kairi was to try to wrestle that belt off Io, and just how even more desperate Io was to not only retain the belt, but to get another win over her former stablemate and her rival.
That's the thing. That desperation permeates everything Kairi does for the remainder of the match, and it's helped so much by Io being an arrogant dickhead in the opening exchanges. I mean, she's laughing at Kairi's attempt to get out of a figure 4 leg lock. She gets hit, Io this is, with a load of Kobashi-like chops in the corner, and as Kairi winds up for this big one, Io nonchalantly walks out of the corner to avoid it. There's no panic. It's a completely nonchalant. And you can see it winding Kairi up. And that sort of arrogant heel intent that she's got, despite the fact that the crowd are not playing along at all because they want Io to win. Kairi's got a load of support as well, to the point where Io actually mentions it in a post-match. But subtle things like that helped to build the desperation in Kairi and helped you invest in Kairi Hojo. I mean, some of the stuff that she was hitting was absolutely brutal. We need to talk about Io's tombstone and how on earth Kairi is able to walk after that, because Jesus Christ, Kairi was low when she hit that. Like, she took all of that on the crown of her head. And Jesus, that poor woman. But I could literally list this match strike for strike because I loved it that much. I mean, I gave it 4 3/4. I was toying between giving this 5 and not giving it 5. It was one of those, do I? I personally prefer this to their 5th anniversary match. It's shorter, it's more frenetic. There's that desperate storyline of Kairi Hojo that sort of permeates the entire thing, especially once you know, and it was heavily rumoured that Kairi Hojo was leaving for NXT at this time. So, bordering on that maniacal side of Kairi that, she locks in this Boston Crab, bending Io through the ropes on the apron. And it's such an aggressive side that we haven't seen in Kairi. And it goes...
Well, if you remember, not to cut you out, but to play off that, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Kairi beat Io a few years back with the insane elbow and that Boston Crab, and she wound up getting Io to submit?
Yeah.
So maybe that's like something that's like, I'm having trouble beating her, and I've used something similar to this. Let me kind of use it in the ropes. That is kind of again, it's the complete storyline. Let's bring it back to that. I used this once to beat her. Let me see if I can do it again, but like with a little bit more of a twist on it.
But on top of that, we talked about the inconsistent selling in the Kagetsu match. That's completely remedied here. I mean, Kairi works so hard on Io's back that Io hits this missile dropkick and then attempts to hit this German suplex, but has to collapse because her back gives out. That's all it took. I mean, I'm never not going to pop for Io hitting that double underhook facebuster, sitting out Kairi landing on her feet and hitting the sliding D. I'm never not going to pop for that. I know they did it in the last match, but it was great. It just works. These two have, like I say, tremendous chemistry. I think the more I talk about it, the more I realise that I do prefer this match to their 5th anniversary show. And the shorter runtime, like I said, it does play into that frenetic, passionate sort of desperation that Kairi has. And I thought that was a great storyline going through and set it apart from the anniversary match. So they cut, obviously, to the post-match. Io has now successfully defended the belt 13 times. Kairi and Io sort of agreed to take it to the next level if they face each other again, but not until after Io was first bigged up and then mocked Kairi for being 3 steps behind her, which is odd. Toni Storm then enters the ring to be the new challenger, which brings Mayu out, who claims that she's lost the last 2 Cinderella tournament matches because she's that hyped up on energy that she forgot she'd actually won them, and promises to win again to go for the winner of the match between Toni and Io. Then Jungle appears and shouts without any elaboration whatsoever, just yells, and then Konami challenges Kairi for the white belt. It's utter carnage, the closing to this segment, Matt.
Yeah, hey, at least it sets stuff up. I mean, you have to, if you're attending the show and then someone asks you the next day, hey, how was the show? Like, well, this, and this. But then it ended, obviously with this fantastic banger, instant classic of a main event. And then it's just like, sometimes you're just like, okay, I got that, but what's next? Well, this is what's next. They already told us what's next. So, yeah, you're kind of a little clustered, but at least you kind of know where they're going on the next round.
Yeah, absolutely. And where we're going is Io's final successful defense, going against Toni Storm, going to a time limit draw, a 30-minute time limit draw at Stardom Gold May 2017 at Corrigan Hall on the 14th of May. So after picking up a relatively rare clean pinfall victory over Io to become the second SWA Undisputed World Women's champion, back at Stardom X Stardom from Osaka in July of 2016, Toni then went on to win the 2017 Cinderella tournament with her eye on Io's red belt as her prize. Now, interestingly enough, in the initial tournament for the SWA belt, Io was the first champion, having beaten Toni Storm in the tournament final. After this match, in their 3 single matches on Japanese soil, 2 had gone to the time limit, and Toni won the other. That's a remarkable stat when you think about it, that Io could not beat Toni on Japanese soil, and goes some way to showing how much Stardom valued her as a Gaijin. She lost in the tournament final, but that was technically an affiliation with Rev Pro and was also in Spain, so we'll ignore that match. Just the last bit of news coming off of this Stardom Gold May show. It also saw the last big match for Kairi Hojo before she left for WWE in June. She would lose the white belt to Mayu Iwatani in the semi-main event, which ultimately impacts the match we'll talk about after this one. So, Matt, they filled 30 minutes, Toni and Io. Do you think they did a good job?
They did very well, but just hit the rewind button real quick. It just seems like Toni has Io's number. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the final of the second ever Mae Young Classic was Toni Storm pinning Io Shirai. So it just seems like everywhere she kind of just has her number. So that's a kind of little interesting fact that I kind of just picked up with your research and my research. But you can tell that this match was going to go along just by the way they were pacing everything in the beginning. Very, very, very slow pace. Not boring. Again, it was just a very slow pace where they're going to kind of look like they were trying to just eat up some time till they can kind of fill up their spots. I thought this was a very good match. Excellent match. I mean, how Toni Storm and Io Shirai, I don't think there's any way that they can have a bad match. But you can kind of see the cracks in Io Shirai in this match. And what I mean by that is her neck injury, which obviously plays up into the match we'll talk about next against Mayu. But Toni Storm has this phenomenal snap pile driver. Holy jeez, I mean, just so flawless. But she's working on Io's neck, and she hits the snap pile driver. And it gets to a point where if you're watching this match and you don't know the finish, that you think the ref's going to stop this because you think Io is legit hurt. Like, Tony's going after her, and ref's like, no, you need to back off, you need to back off, you need to back off. And there's almost this hush that follows upon the crowd because they think that Io's legit hurt. And Io's selling is just so spot on here. After that, she winds up getting real aggressive, which one, just shows one how bad she wants the belt, and two, from a kayfabe standpoint, okay, obviously Io isn't as hurt as we thought she would be, because or else why would the ref let the match keep going back and forth? Io winds up getting towards the end. She bites down. She fights through the pain through her neck. She hits their big final fury, and she just can't, because of her neck, she just can't get the clean advantage. Io winds up going for the moonsault, but she winds up taking so much time climbing to the top rope that eventually Tony winds up getting her feet up. Tony hits the top rope leg drop for 2. Tony winds up locking in a reverse clover relief, and the time limit expires to a time limit draw. Again, I thought this match was really good. They did a really good job playing up Tony Storm's aggressive side, and just how, in this 14th match of this title reign, just how beat up Io is, but she still doesn't want to give up the belt. So really good, simple storytelling here. I gave this 4.25 stars.
I give it the same 4.25 stars. Now, there's two things that I wanted to sort of talk about. There was a little bit of dead air in this match for me that definitely wasn't there in the Kairi or Meiko match, which are the longer matches. So I think Kairi's went 30 seconds under the time limit, and they went full on at each other for 29 minutes. And obviously Tony and Io didn't. But obviously you talked about in our very first episode together, you went to a time limit draw. And Devon, I know this. Come on. No, I can't remember. But how difficult is it?
Devon Moore.
Devon Moore. I knew it was Devon Moore. I don't know why I doubted myself. Anyway, how difficult is it to plan out a match of this length that is going to a draw?
You can't. I mean, it all depends. Everybody's different. But if you're going to have that much time and it's going to go to a draw, you really can't plan out everything. You can, again, my match with him, it was like, I talked about it, in our first episode. He came up to me and said, I know what you do. You know what I do. You want to call it out there? No problem. If that's what you want to do, you're more comfortable with, no problem. So this way, I mean, and what that gives you is like, you can kind of breathe a little because you don't have to remember 1 spot, 2 spots, 5 spots, 10 spots, every spot from A to Z. You can kind of go out there and kind of work on your character work, and kind of, if you want to change things up, it's really not that hard because you don't have really much to change up, depending on what the crowd's buying or what they're not. If they're into this arm submission, let me work it a little. Okay, let me come back to it. So a match this length, it seems like, especially these two, by the way this match was, they probably only had a couple things maybe called back. Obviously, they had to talk about Io's hurt neck, because that was obviously a spot that they used with the ref, and maybe a spot that they used to maybe eat up some time as well, and to get the crowd really invested. Is Io really hurt here? And then it seems like they maybe just put a couple other spots together, and then just the finish. Io hitting the feet, eating Tony's feet on the moonsault, Io hitting the top rope leg drop, which I believe she used to beat Io to win the SWA title, which is kind of a nice callback if my research there is right. Io winds up kicking out. Tony locks in the reverse clover leaf, and then time expires.
I just want to go back to that neck injury. Apparently, the pile driver did legitimately injure Io's neck, and after she lost the belt to Mayu in the next match, she had to take a month off to rehab it. So,
wow.
Though I'm sure it wasn't as bad as was made out in some of the selling, which was fantastic, by the way. Apparently it legitimately injured her because her head wasn't tucked properly. So not only did she end up finishing this match, where the very next move was a neck breaker from Toni Storm, she then went on to face Mayu, which basically the entire match was spent with Io on her neck. So, it wasn't a pleasant 2 matches to be Io Shirai, I'm sure. But I thought this match was great. There was a little bit of dead air, like I say, but otherwise a really good match. Sidewalk slam on the wooden floor. There was a great hip attack with Io sat up in the chair. All the work on the neck. I thought these two had good chemistry. Like you said, it was a good sort of through line that basically Tony is sort of Io's Achilles heel. Io can't quite get the victory, and then that submission that Tony wraps Io up in before the time limit expires, that looked brutal. It looked incredible, and Io sold it like death. Absolutely phenomenal. I'm with you 100%. 4.25 stars. Post-match, Mayu comes to the ring. Io is broken at this point, is just lying on the ground, completely broken. Mayu says, hey, look, I won the white belt. We should have a fight, is basically the extent of her promo. She hangs the belt on top of Io's trophy. Io agrees eventually, and Mayu walks off for getting a white belt because it's Mayu Iwatani. And that's how we're set up for the end of this reign. Stardom Galaxy Stars 2017, 21st of June, from Korakuen Hall once again, with Mayu defeating Io Shirai in 27 minutes and 52 seconds. The third longest match of Io's run, the longest match in the Mayu versus Io Shirai trilogy. Matt, we're at the end of the road. What did you think of this match?
This match might be the greatest women's match I've ever seen. This is, I mean, you talk about it all depends on what you like. I mean, there's literally, like I said, this is, if I had a list of the top 3 greatest women's matches of all time, it's Meiko and then the second and third Mayu match, and I don't know which one. Different days you get different answers, but this was great. The psychology, this was very, very easy, and that's what Io does very well, and Mayu as well. It's like they keep the psychology simple. They just built upon it. Obviously, Io has the hurt neck, so Mayu's game plan is number one on the offensive. I got to go after that neck. Nobody else can beat her. Nobody's been beating her, but it's a little crack. Let me keep going after that neck. And Mayu's offense, obviously she does the moonsault, but she throws a lot of strikes, targets the neck, and the suplexes, especially the 2-stage dragon suplex, targets the neck. So that's her game plan. You can see that's her game plan, is to target the neck. Also, the game plan, as you see as this match unfolds, is to at all costs avoid the moonsault. Every time I'm in the ring with Io, I wind up getting beat by the moonsault. So that's the psychology set for. You can tell as the match progresses, they wind up going to the outside. Again, huge brawl into the crowd. It seems like anytime one of these big matches, somebody has to dive off the entranceway there. But this time it's Mayu. She does the dive onto Io and the entire Stardom roster. They wind up going back and forth. Again, a lot of great network here. There's actually a point here where they wind up exchanging suplexes, and they get 1 counts. They're hitting these big suplexes, and they're kicking out at 1, which when the story is right, which obviously isn't in here, I pop huge for it. I pop huge for it because it makes sense. Io, she winds up, she decides that, hey, I got to change it up a little bit, so she targets Mayu's back. She winds up hitting an insane elbow drop and then into the Texas Cloverleaf. Again, kind of like the combination that Kairi beat Io with a few years back. Io winds up hitting a perfect dragon suplex into the moonsault. Only gets a 2. Mayu winds up countering with the tombstone and locomotion dragon suplexes, which I knew the result of this match, but I thought that was the finish. Io winds up kicking out. Last thing she has, Mayu fires up. They have the crowd at a pitch-perfect place to finish the match. 2-stage dragon suplex for the win and the end of one of the greatest title reigns in the history of pro wrestling. Again, 5 stars. If you give it anything less, I just feel bad for you. This was 5 stars. Just the emotion of Mayu winning the match and just the emotion of just this brilliant, damn near picture perfect title reign coming to an end.
I mean, you look at this with Kairi now gone from the company and Mayu having beat her on her way out for the white belt. This became an even more important match for Iwatani. If she wins, then not only does she beat her friend and mentor for the first time in singles action, gaining closure after Io's turn, but she'd also become the first ever person to hold the red and white belts simultaneously. A symbolic representation of how much she has grown and passed Io on her way to being the person to lead Stardom into a new era. Effectively, what this match was the unofficial match to crown the new ace of Stardom. And it felt like a real changing of the guard. I mean, there's moments where it's Mayu doing the big move. So, for example, you talked about the big move off the concourse entrance, which, you know, it was Io's thing. It's been Io's thing for the entirety of this run. And Mayu's the one doing it now. And there's moments that harken back to those first two matches, that Texas Cloverleaf, where in the first match, Mayu was scrabbling for the ropes, you know, panicking, no idea what to do. Yet in this match, she's calm, she's collected, she's thinking rationally, and it again shows that growth, that sense of a plan. She guesses that Io is going to go target her knee more, which Io does, so Mayu relies on hitting suplexes instead, targeting the neck, instead of fighting out of a tight spot frenetically, which she was guilty of doing in the first match. She uses things like arm drags and things to create space to recover. And overall, it's a real sense of completion. It's the longest match of the trilogy, like I mentioned, which shows how far Mayu has come and how far she's pushing Io now from that first match onwards. And the longer the match goes, the more we see the desperation of Io. Desperation we haven't really seen before. We started to see it in the Tony match, but we see it even more here, and we see it more obviously here. She doesn't stand on Mayu before hitting the moonsault. Now, if you remember in the second match, she doubles back to make sure she stands on Mayu, yet here she doesn't. She runs to the top rope, knowing she doesn't have the time to be arrogant, racing to the top, knowing that it took 2 moonsaults last time to finish Mayu. How many will it take this time? Do I have the energy? However, finally, after 2 matches, Mayu hits the 2-step dragon suplex for the first time and to take the victory and both the belts, ushering in this new beginning for Stardom with Kairi gone and Io on her way out of the company in less than a year. A little thing to mention, obviously, due to the aforementioned neck injury, Io will go on hiatus until July 30th to recover from that neck bump. But even so, this was the perfect cathartic end of this entire storyline with Mayu. She felt, and you're absolutely right, with the way the crowd was built by the end of this match, she felt like the star. She felt like the new icon in Stardom. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and again, 95% of this is on Mayu Iwatani. She built herself up. She's the one in the ring doing the work. But you don't get to that top spot not unless the number one person in the company is going to pull you up. So, and then Io basically did, the final 5 or 10%. Again, you can tell that these two are really good friends in real life, or just how giving this entire trilogy, how she was to Mayu. And I thought the post-match promo was funny about how, Io, she wanted to be the one to put the belt on Mayu, and she's trying. There's this awkward silence, and it probably only goes by about 30 seconds, but it feels like forever. And the crowd is just kind of like, what's because she can't get the belt on. And then finally, Io grabs the microphone. She goes, Mayu, you're just too skinny. I thought that was, we just saw like neck drop after neck drop and all this, like this brilliant storytelling where you probably have the people in the crowd crying, and literally the last thing Io says to end her reign is, yeah, you're just too skinny. I can't put the belt on you.
It was almost like they'd returned to the Io and Mayu of old, the Thunder Rock. So it was quite nice to have that. But yeah, I agree. I laughed at that too.
Did they ever team up again after this before Io left for WWE? Or
they definitely teamed up in Io's last match.
I don't know. Yeah, that I know. But how about prior to that? In between, did they ever get back together for like a random tag match or anything like that?
I'd have to look. I'm not entirely sure. I imagine at some point they will have done in like the Mask Fiestas or something like that. They might well have done. I'm sure someone will be able to tell us. But off the top of my head, the only one that I can think of as 100% certain is Io's last match in that tag match.
But, yeah, brilliant run. Absolute brilliant run.
Fantastic run. I mean, we've reached the end of it now. 16 matches spanning 2 years from 2015 to 2017. 546 days. The second longest single reign with the World of Stardom Championship even now. A total of 5 hours, 15 minutes and 6 seconds wrestled, an average match time of 22 minutes and 51 seconds, and an average match rating, according to me and Matt, of 4.22 stars. This is the pinnacle of the World of Stardom Championship. This is the pinnacle of match quality, of storytelling, of selling. And yes, there have been great runs since, but this was the pinnacle for the title, Matt.
Yeah, I don't know if you watch Big Bang Theory or Young Sheldon, or our listeners listen to it. Basically, it's based upon this character, Sheldon Cooper, who's this genius. I think he graduated college at age 12. And like his big thing is he loves homework. Oh, I can't wait to do more homework. I just love homework. That's what like this was when I was like, okay, I have time for 3 EO matches today or 2 EO matches. I was like, I couldn't wait. I was like, okay, I have to do this for our Patreon episode. I was so looking forward to every single match. And it's just like, man, we really, in my opinion, we hit an absolute home run. We started at the top of the top for this Patreon, and we thank all of you for subscribing and listening and giving us the great feedback that you've been given. And I'm excited to see where we go from here, because this was just absolutely great. Now, obviously, Rob, you do your research and you've watched a lot more Stardom than you do. As far as in the history of Stardom, can you give me your number one wrestler in the history of Stardom? Because for me, it's Io Shirai without a doubt. Now, obviously, Mayu is still, it's got to be in everybody's top 3 or 4. And she's still there, and she can obviously still will and can expand upon her legacy. But it's Io 1, 2, or 3. Like, where do you put Io as far as all-time Stardom wrestlers? Because to me, she's number 1 with a bullet.
I mean, Mayu is Miss Stardom. She's been there since the first show. She's still there now. She puts on fantastic matches. She could get, the tap on the shoulder and have fantastic matches with whoever you put her in the ring with. She's, to this day, one of the only people that can have decent matches with Fukigen Death, which I think puts her at number 1. But, I mean, you talk about name recognition, you talk about, you've mentioned that Io's in the same breath as, in this run, she's in the same breath as the best in wrestling, not just the best in women's wrestling, the best in wrestling, full stop. And to be in that conversation, to have a reign like this, to be so well known in a company that, let's face it, in 2015, 2016, wasn't the most well-known company, I think Io's got to be number 1. She has to be number 1. I mean, I imagine the members of Threedom are your top 3 in, whatever order, 1A, 1B, 1C. But I think Io takes it.
Yeah, now you're basing that upon the Christmas gift that my daughter made me? But yeah, you'd be right. It's Io's number 1. Kairi was number 2, but the more I'm going back in the catalog and watch these Mayu Iwatani matches, even if you're going to list these, even in this run, if you're going to list the 5 matches, to me it's the 3 Mayu matches and then the 2 Kairi matches. So I think the more I'm going back into the catalog, and not only that, but the more stuff I'm watching Mayu Iwatani now in 2020, 21, and 22. I think that she's eventually going to bump Kairi off, and then Kairi be number 3. But yeah, the Threedom is 1, 2, and 3, and then 4 for me would probably be either Momo or Arisa, which is another story for another day. But just absolutely, just what a brilliant run!
Tremendous, and what a way to start the Patreon. As they say, the only way is down from here, but there we are. So thank you so much for those of you who have subscribed to our Patreon. We cannot thank you enough. Hopefully this is going to make it worth it. Fingers crossed. Obviously, we'll be providing these Stardom Cast extra episodes every other Wednesday. Obviously, next will be on the 19th of January, and we'll be doing a full match review of, Matt mentioned it, Arisa Hoshiki versus Tam Nakano in one of the greatest Stardom matches Stardom has ever put on. Just a quick little plug. If you go to the Patreon page and go to the polls, there is a poll up at the moment to vote for what we are going to do for our February Patreon episode. So if I just quickly tell you what the votes you can choose from. There are 5 votes, or there are 5 options, should I say. And we have got the Momo Watanabe White Belt Retrospective, the Stardom Ryogoku Cinderella Champions Fiesta 2013 review, which of course is the last time before Dream Queendom that Stardom ran Sumo Hall, a match review of Oedo versus Queen's Quest, the loser leaves unit match from the 7th anniversary show, a list of the top 10 hidden gems from Stardom in 2021, or the Red Belt retrospective of Utami Hayashishita. Obviously, that has just ended. Those are your 5 options. We are going to take that poll down on the 19th of January, just so that myself and Matt have got enough time to watch everything before we record, ready for February. Also, a little plug, the Stardom Living the Dream ebook that I wrote is now on sale. You can buy it from the links that are pinned to my Twitter page at RealRobGoodwin. You can get it in paper form or in ebook form. So any sort of sharing or buying will be hugely appreciated. It has been a huge labour of love. But in the meantime, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page at the Stardom Cast, our Twitter feed at Podmania. At the Stardom Cast. So used to doing the Podmania one. You can talk to me on Twitter at RealRobGoodwin. Matt, where can they find you?
Look on Twitter and or the Instagram. Just type in Matt Turner OF, and I'll be right there. Anything you want to talk about? Any questions, comments? The past couple days, I've been getting a lot of positive feedback on the podcast, so it's greatly appreciated. Any questions or comments, or you want to talk about anything, just hit me up on there, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can.
And thank you so much for listening, guys. We really do appreciate it. Until the 19th of January, we shall see you guys again soon.